Hello, everybody, and welcome to ATP Insights, where we cover the most important tech news in Asia. Today is Monday, the 20th of July, 2026, and we are going to talk about how Kimi K3 strengthens China's AI ambitions. I don't think this stuff in China is going to go away, and we have another amazing array of guests for everybody today. We're going to start with Bryl Lim, software engineering lead at PocketDevs, to join us to talk about how agentic software is going to help small businesses operate more efficiently and expand their capabilities. We're also going to have, following that, we'll welcome Mayoran Rajendra, General Manager for AI Transformation at SMBC, a big Japanese bank, to discuss how AI-driven banking will improve the quality, speed, and accessibility of financial services on the business side. We will also talk to John Paul Syriatowicz, co-founder and chair at Squiz, to cover how AI-powered content management and discovery will help businesses deliver more visible and effective digital experiences. And then Janet Salem, we have 7 guests today. It's going to be an amazing show. Co-founder at FootprintLab is going to talk about how credible AI-enabled carbon data is helping businesses reduce reporting risk and make better sustainability decisions. We'll be joined by Manit, Parikh, founder and CEO at the Binary Holdings, to talk about their amazing company. We'll also talk about Stefan, Saric, product designer and founder of Product Signal, to talk about how agentic product intelligence is helping businesses make faster, clearer, and more accountable product decisions. And finally, Michael Walters is going to join us. He's the founder and CEO at tikpay, to talk about how unified payment infrastructure can help transport operators lower costs, collaborate more effectively, and build more flexible mobility businesses. And before we get to all of our guests and some news, let's hear from our presenting sponsor, Twilio. Twilio is the secure and scalable platform to build amazing customer engagement without the complexity, with the AI-driven workflows you need to connect. They are trusted by over 300,000 businesses. It is the platform that makes more possible. Visit Twilio.com to start building today. Okay, let's get to some news. Okay, Kimi K3 strengthens China's AI ambitions. Let's talk about this. Moonshot AI's Kimi K3 has become one of the most obvious demonstrations that Chinese AI companies can compete near the frontier while following a different commercial model. We spent a lot of time talking about, like, what is the real model here? Where is the value actually going to accrue? And I think this is a really good example of not just what happens when an open weight model explodes, but what happens when it comes from China. This is just to give some details here, K3 is a mixture of experts and MOE model with 2.8 trillion total parameters and a 1 million token context window. Moonshot is positioning sort of the existence around K3 about coding, tool use, and long-running agentic tasks, rather than just sort of straightforward chatbot performance. That's a big differentiation as well. The model is already available through Kimi, but its full weight and technical report are scheduled for release July 27th. It's not that far away. It's next Monday. And until that happens, it is more accurate to describe K3 as a promised open weight model than a fully released one. This is coming, though. We spent a lot of time thinking about this. The open weightness of this model is coming. And if you look at some early benchmark stuff, K3 reached first place in the front-end code arena with a score of 1679, and the related Hacker News discussion received more than 100 points. People are paying attention to this, not just in China, not just in Asia, but all over the world. And actually, I think this is a common theme, actually, for what's happening in Asia right now, and in particular, what's happening in the AI space. If you had come to us a year ago, and not just to talk about AI, but if you'd come to us a year ago and listened to ATP, you would have heard a lot of stories that are Asia related, that are Southeast Asia related, that are Japan related, that are China related, that are kind of contained, right? And to be fair, even like 6 months ago, we were talking about how Google is going to do this thing in Korea, or Microsoft is going to do this thing in Japan, but the impact on the rest of the world was kind of relatively muted. But in this case, I think it's different, and I don't think this is going to change, actually. And I think if you look at what's happening globally, and then you look at what's happening in Asia, I think the things that are happening in Asia are going to start, and this includes India as well. Obviously, it includes China, because that's what we're talking about today. But I think a lot of what's happening here is not just going to have an impact on the region itself, right? It's pretty clear when China does something, what the impact is on Southeast Asia. It's pretty clear when Japan does something, really what the impact is on Singapore because those two countries have this symbiotic relationship. But it has not been as clear to the rest of the world what's going to happen and what the impact is if something happens in China, if something happens in India, if something happens in Japan, if something happens in Southeast Asia, what the impact is going to be globally. And that might have been because a lot of the ecosystem stuff that was taking place in the region was for the region. And I'll get back to Kimi K3 in a moment so you can see like where this thing all plays out. But I think that if you're watching this, you need to think about this. If you're in Asia, if you're building in Asia, even if you started building in Asia but moved to Silicon Valley, which some companies do, what you're going to see is that what's getting built out here because of the fundamentals of the ecosystem that exists in Asia today, and because of the way the US ecosystem is behaving, and because of, we used to call this when I was at Goldman Sachs and at Morgan Stanley, that market is overbrokered. There's so much stuff that's being built there, and yet we have greenfields out here. Right, we're broadcasting live from Thailand, but live from Asia. And we know just from being here that it's very greenfields. Anyway, all this stuff that's happening with Kimi K3 reflects user preferences for generated interfaces rather than a complete measurement of software engineering ability. And Moonshot itself, again, looking at this thing globally, is claiming that reasoning and agentic performance still need independent testing after researchers can run the weights themselves. So it's interesting to me, like how the level of humility around what Moonshot is doing. And to be fair, the founder of Moonshot, if I remember correctly, graduated from Carnegie Mellon, somewhere in the United States, and actually worked in the US a little bit before he went back to China to build Kimi, to build Moonshot, actually. And here's the key. And so we talked about this a little bit, but the important part about this is not necessarily just the fact that it's open weight. It's not about the fact that it scored really high, if not the highest, at the highest level, higher than everybody else on the coding benchmarks, and scored very well on the rest of the benchmarks as well. Benchmarks are great. We know that. We spend a lot of time talking about benchmarks, but more importantly than that is like, what's the real world usage? And on top of that is that, what is the economic argument about this? We spent a ton of time, both on ATP Insights and on AGTP Daily, talking about, okay, these model businesses are great, but if they're just going to charge for tokens, and I've read a lot of articles actually over the last week or so that says, and Martin says this a lot on AGTP Daily, that token maxing is done. It's just done. It didn't even last that long, but it's done. Okay. And from an economic standpoint, the idea is, what is going to be your new economic model? Because if the model itself becomes a commodity, right? So think about it. Kimi K3 is good. Excuse me, DeepSeek is good. All the other sort of open weight and even non-open weight Chinese models are really good. We spent way too much time talking about Anthropic and Claude and Fable 5 and Mythos and OpenAI and 5.5 and 5.6 and Solar and all this other kind of stuff, and Sol, excuse me. The models are good. Let's just say that. And the more you train them, the bigger they get. This is the biggest, by the way, open weight model, 2.8 trillion parameters. That makes it important. But the real question is, how are they going to make money? So Moonshot is representing frontier scale capability through an API and intends to allow developers deploy the model by themselves. That's key. And it places pressure on proprietary model providers because customers can compare not only on performance, but also on cost, right? So if like K3 is good enough, we use K3 as an example, and in some cases as a proxy for the rest of the market. But if K3 itself is good enough to handle, I mean, we know it's good enough, but just based on the benchmarks, right? It's apples for apples when you compare coding, agentic coding and agentic coding. And when you run that stuff through the benchmark testing, it scores higher than everybody else. Let's just put that to the side. Okay, so when you compare it on performance, in there, let's just say it's not winning per se, but it's good or better than the rest of the models that are out there. But the other question is, how much does it cost to use, right? Do you need 5 accounts on Claude to actually get stuff done? Do you want to have your work throttled in the middle of doing it? And then what does it cost you to actually get real stuff done? Do you have to put a budget on people in places where there was no budget necessary before? And then what does that do? How do you measure what the ROI is on that, or what the reverse ROI is on that, what the impact is on a negative basis on ROI, or just on efficiency and effectiveness when you're saying you can only use this for a certain amount of time and then you have to go back to doing something maybe you haven't done in a while now because you've been doing agentic coding, and no matter how good you've been at typing your own code and understanding structure and understanding the framework within which that code is operating, again, you can't be good at something you don't do all the time. In a way, there's no way you can be. Golf is that way, baseball's that way, the World Cup is over, football is that way as well. You just cannot be great at something you're not doing all the time. Okay, and you have to think about, how do I control the deployment of this model? What kind of dependencies does it have? And do I want to be dependent on a single vendor for models? This is one of the things that we talk, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit today as well, but we talk about this on many of our shows, on many of our segments with our guests. And I don't think we're going to stop doing this soon. And that question is, have you considered, or would you consider, or is your firm considering doing sort of like the highest, most important tasks on models where you have to pay a subscription price or API access? And then like the rest of the stuff that you do, just use the Chinese open weight models. Yeah. This is a big question. Now, thinking machines as well is wandering into the open weight space. We can cover that on our global show for sure. But what we're talking about is, what is it like for global companies that still for now have access? It's not been banned yet. All this stuff sits on Bedrock, right? This is an AWS product. It sits on Bedrock. What are the choices that are going to get made from an orchestration standpoint and from a harness standpoint to be able to use these open weight models? And what is the dependence there? What happens when you can use these open weight models? And let's say you do like an 80-20 thing, where you use the model for 80%, we use the open weight model for 80% of your stuff, and 20% you're like, I have to use Anthropic, or I have to use OpenAI for this. But over time, that 80% could turn into 83%, 85%, 87%. And then at some point, you're going to think, you know what? This thing just keeps getting better and better. And I don't care, to be fair, if it got that way by distilling ChatGPT 5.5 or 5.6. And I don't care if it got that way by distilling, even Claude 4.8 or Fable 5 or Mythos 5. Like, I don't care. It's there and it works and it's less expensive. In some cases, it's 1/6 the price. In some cases, it's 1/8 the price. And in some cases, it's 1/10 the price. If you're a CFO, and this goes all the way back to the comments that the Uber CFO made and the CTO made, what was it, back in April? And we've maxed out, no pun intended, on all of our agentic coding stuff. Now what do? You have to think about rebudgeting this stuff, right? So while there's no final pricing confirmed yet for Kimi K3, you can imagine a situation where, again, competing with the other open weight models, and this is the biggest one with 2.8 trillion parameters, as I've already mentioned, that it's going to be lower priced. It doesn't have to be the lowest price either. Here's the thing, right? It doesn't have to be the best performing model anymore. We've reached the point, I think, in some of these LLMs where the performance is so good now and the access to the parameters is so high. Just think about 2.8 trillion parameters. Think about yourself. Like, how many words do you know? You definitely don't know 2.8 million words. I know I don't know 2.8 million words either. But anyway, this is a gigantic model. At some point, these models are going to get to a place, if they're not already there, where they're good enough to run almost anything you'd want to run. And in that sense, you don't need to use the best model, whatever the best model is on the benchmarks, right? Just think about your own PC or personal computer usage. Most people buy, and even most companies buy computers and computing technology that's good enough. When I was at Goldman Sachs, we didn't have like the most memory on every computer we had. We didn't have the best chip on every computer we had. Not everybody in the firm had the most high-powered thing. Maybe the traders did. Maybe some of the salespeople did. But the rest of the firm just needed a computer that was good enough, and maybe that was 80-20 as well. And I don't think that's going to go away. But there's something else that's going on here as well. Okay, and this is not a political show. It's just not. But artificial intelligence has reached the point, not just locally, not just regionally, but globally, where it's part of the sort of global sort of political conversation. And I'm not going to make any sort of, what's the right thing? I'm not picking sides here. I don't really care. I honestly don't have a horse in this race, but you cannot get away from the fact that what's happening in the AI space is very important to governments globally, and not just the United States and China, but in this case, those are the two biggest ones. But it's very important to what's happening in Asia. And again, in this case, don't undersell what's happening right now, but what we don't know so much about in India. Again, India, huge technical educational experiences there and expertise there, excuse me. Similar to China, obviously the US is the US. But this K3 release also arrived, okay, alongside a much larger political message. At the World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai, what is it? Today's July 20th. This is 3 days ago. Xi Jinping argued that advanced AI should be more broadly accessible and presented open source development as part of China's contribution to global technological development. China also promoted the World Artificial Intelligence Cooperation Organization. This is starting to sound like the IAEI. Do I have that right? The International Atomic Energy Agency, as a new institution focused on access, development, and international coordination. The product and the policy reinforce each other. China can now offer developing countries working models, technical assistance, and alternative governance forums. Okay, but I want you to stop and think about this for a second and why it matters. Again, I don't have a dog in this race, okay, at all. A dog in this fight, I think is what you say, or a horse in this race. Sorry, I'm mixing metaphors. But the point is you can't ignore the different reactions from a government perspective to the leading powers in the AI space. And because we're in Asia, let's just comment on what China is doing here, because I think it's important. It appears to me, so the Chinese government has a policy, and they've had it for a while now, called One Belt, One Road, the Belt and Road policy. And one of the things they're trying to do is affect soft power. And they see the artificial intelligence space as a place where they can impact their own soft power. I said it a moment ago, and I'll say it again. They can give the power of artificial intelligence in a way that is effective, efficient, and cost-effective via the open weight models. But they can also give them technical assistance in the same way that they can build a bridge over a river that never had a bridge over it before, in a smaller country that maybe could not have afforded to build that bridge. This is the ultimate way to impact soft power. And it also gives its argument more substance than a diplomatic statement or a diplomatic one, right? They don't really have to make this gigantic comment. They don't have to go somewhere and give somebody some money, but they make these models available in a way that's cost effective and cost efficient. And again, because the models themselves are good enough and because they're open weight, it also allows people to adapt these models, to fine tune these models for themselves in a way that may not be obvious. And again, if you look at the way the models get developed in China versus the way they get developed in the United States, again, because they're being developed by humans, you have to understand that there is a cultural bent. And Martin and I have talked about this actually on AGTP. In some ways, the models are a representation or a metaphor for the leadership of those companies. Now, I don't know the founder of Moonshot that well. He's Chinese, educated in the United States, brought some stuff back. And you can imagine that his personality is going to come out in the way these models are developed, in the same way that the mission statement for Anthropic kind of represents the way Dario Amodei feels. And the mission statement for OpenAI is just much more attuned to the way Sam Altman is. Okay. Now, this whole situation here, again, from a political perspective, creates a route for Chinese models and technical practices to become embedded in the digital infrastructure of countries that potentially lack the capital to build frontier systems themselves. And that's important. Okay. Now, we did mention earlier that the benchmark tests are great, but you have to ask yourself, like, how do we know if this is a real frontier breakthrough, and what's it going to take actually for Kimi K, whatever the next version of this is? I love the naming conventions. I want to be in these meetings, so I always talk about that. But the initial reports that we get are that people really, really like these models, and people that have been out there testing it, all of them say, again, they're good enough, if not better than good enough, in relation to some of the other models that are out there. But the first test is going to be, after the benchmark tests go out there, is just independently reproducing these results. right? Real companies are going to have to take this and use it to attack real problems, real issues inside their company, real things that they're trying to solve using artificial intelligence. And even though, as I said, that look, the first thing a model is going to do when it gets released or just before it gets released is give it to these benchmark result companies. So when it comes out, boom, right away, there's at least some information out there about these models, so people can make at least a small value judgment about, should I even try this? Does it even make sense to do this? Right? Because that I think is going to be super important. But outside researchers on their own cannot fully examine the model until the weights and the technical reports are released. And this is important, right? And that's why this may take like another week or so to see exactly what the impact is going to be here, because that's going to matter as well. Excuse me. Now, we know that it went through the front-end code arena, and this measures how users judge generated web interfaces. It does not establish that K3 is the strongest model across debugging, because remember, it scored the highest score on this automated coding thing. But like, what are they testing for when they're doing the automated coding? And I think that's key here. It doesn't establish that K3 is the strongest model across debugging, repository level engineering, or even reliable product deployment. This is the thing too, right? When you look at the way the models get developed themselves, right? Again, you have to go back to real world stuff, because that's going to really matter. And like, even just deploying something out, deploying code that's written by an agentic coding agent, it's going to take a little bit more work, right? We're not 100% there where the agentic coding can do all of the work. Now, we do have companies out there that say, and who were we talking to last week? Who's somebody, who's on ATP, read something, and they they do a bunch of agentic development for people. But the founder and the CEO of that company was pretty explicit when he said all of the coding in their company gets done by agents. Nobody writes independent code anymore. But I think the thing we leave out of these conversations is the code just does not get written and then just get deployed. Now, you notice that what I said here is that we are not suggesting, and neither do the benchmarks suggest, that K3 is the strongest model across debugging, okay, and product deployment. So it may be great at writing code, but at some point that code has to be reviewed. It has to be debugged as well, because every piece of code that gets written has some kind of bug in it, even if it's written by an agentic coding application. So don't be fooled by that as well. And long-running agentic work, so outside of the coding space, but like they've wanted to be focused on this long-running agentic work with a million token sort of context, which is very important. And again, I always talk about this. Think about yourself and your own experience. Think about the things that you remember. Think about the context that you understand. And then think about how a million tokens isn't nearly as much as your own personal memory. And think about the things where you have context, even just from a work perspective, where somebody will come over to you a week after they've had a discussion with you and you still remember that discussion. And frankly, you still remember some of the details because maybe you've done a little bit of work on it on your own. That's the type of thing that actually ends up being really important. And don't forget that that type of operational reliability is really going to matter. Okay, Martin, before we get to our first guests, let's get a quick message from our second sponsor, which is Boomi. Boomi is the data activation company for artificial intelligence. It powers the agentic enterprise by bringing data to life across your business. Trusted by over 30,000 customers and supported by a network of 800 plus partners, Boomi helps organizations of all sizes achieve agility, efficiency, and innovation at scale. Okay, let's welcome our first guest today. We are going to bring in, excuse me, Bryl Lim, software engineering lead at PocketDevs. Bryl, how are you? Can you hear me okay? Awesome. It's great to have you. Give us one more second and let's bring you in. Awesome. Okay, Bryl, it's great to have you here. We wanted to, and thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day to come and join us. We wanted to talk about how agentic software is going to help small businesses operate more efficiently and expand their capabilities. But before we get to that in detail, tell us a little bit about PocketDevs.
So PocketDevs, we're a software development firm based here in the Philippines. We cater small to medium-sized enterprises, startups, build their POCs and their enterprise software, and across different industries really. And we've been operating for more than 7 years now.
What do you think the biggest change has been? Like you said, you've been operating for 7 years now, right?
Yes, that's correct.
What's been the biggest change for you guys in like the last 6 months?
Definitely in the pace of how we ship software. Traditionally, before we had a lot of engineers working on different features, different things, and with agentic software development, things have gotten really, really fast for us. Even a single engineer can ship features in like a day. And the shift really right now is for validating the generated code with our agentic tools. And having experienced engineers do the validation is incredibly helpful for the work that we do.
But what do you think has changed more? The expectations from the clients that you're serving, or the idea that internally, like I can just get way more done from an individual engineer or from a team of engineers? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Based on our experience, the changes really from the stakeholders and our clients haven't really changed that much yet, but we do see
Really?
this in the future, yes. But of course, internally, we do have some certain expectations since we have provisioned, agentic tools, and there is this like expectation to use them, and of course to deliver on our investments on these tools.
So what kind of explanations are necessary when you talk to your clients when, like you mentioned, right, that the pace of shipping software is just so much faster now? And I presume that's because, and have you guys made a platform decision? Are you using Claude for this, or sorry, are you using Fable for this, or using Claude for this, or using ChatGPT for this? Like how has that worked internally? Or do you just give access to both tools and let the developers decide themselves?
Well, usually it's the tech leads who give, like, we do have some conversations internally on which tools are better suited for the job. But right
Yep.
now, we're primarily using Codex by OpenAI
Got it.
uh, in terms of our tools. But this has been always an ongoing. There's always changes ongoing. Before we've been using Copilot from
Microsoft
GitHub,
from
and
GitHub, yeah.
over time we've gone to adapt to these new tools.
What is already working so well? Like, what can you give your clients that you couldn't give them before from an agentic standpoint? Because I presume at some level you're making recommendations to them of like, you asked us to build this thing for you, but if you apply agentic AI to that in your production environment, you could actually be as efficient as we are. What's already working out there that you can actually deploy for some of your clients?
Definitely, it's the speed on which we can like validate the features that they want. So, for instance, in terms of building prototypes, we we usually have an AI note taker taking the client feedback and so on. And then after the meeting, we can quickly spin up a POC of their requested features because I'd like to call it pre AI. Um, Before these agentic tools, it would like taken us a week or several days to quickly iterate on the client's feedback. And that has gotten much faster. But the fact remains, there are still a lot of feedbacks and continuous iterations that we have to do, which is completely different from what people expect with agentic tools that you can just one shot the thing and that's the expected output.
Yeah, so that's the other thing I want to ask you. Your own expectations internally are going to be either validated or unvalidated every single day as your development teams, and even I'm presuming some of your other teams are using agentic AI or some form of AI every day. And as you move along, you can just iterate across that stuff and understand better, like where can we use this and where can't we use it in a way that's effective for us. But your clients are not in the same place as you are from an experience standpoint yet. What does it take to convince them that they should be deploying not just you to use agentic AI to be more efficient for them, but that they should also find places inside of their companies where you can build agentic AI experiences for them that make their businesses better? How convinced are they that that is actually the case?
Well, we usually don't just take feedback or take input from our clients. We usually find ways and where we go beyond that and where we can find gaps in their processes. And some of our
Okay.
clients have this conception that with AI, they can just plug and play it into their different processes of their
Sure.
business. Right.
Sure.
Some of their gaps in their processes can just be done with plain automation without
Right.
any AI layer in it, because we're also factoring in costs, which is a substantial part of when we're delivering solutions. So we are proactive in that part. We do find some gaps because we take in the requirements that their business has and try to address the core issues and find ways where we can elevate how they streamline their processes. And part of that is with agentic tools, agentic orchestrators, and some of that can just be done with a simple script, simple cron jobs, and so on.
What what do the economics look like? In other words, how do you look at the costing of this stuff for yourselves as well, right? Because it sounds to me like you're using agentic AI to do a lot of the coding that you're doing. That's not cheap, although Codex is, at least from what I've heard and what I've read, it's slightly less expensive than Fable 5. But how are you as a team looking at the cost that you're using, and then how do you explain that to your clients as well? Where like you can use the agentic AI, but you have to be careful of X, Y, and Z.
So as for costs for internal tools, we have gotten better cost savings on using Codex compared to Claude, based on our experience. And for the economics of our service costings, it's still the same as before pre-AI, because we quantify based on the value and the deliverables we have for our clients instead of like the speed of the delivery. And this begs the question from our client, if it's that fast to build with AI, then we can just do the same. And this is where it gets on the dangerous path, because if they believe they can do the thing with just the tools that we're using, we remind them that these are just tools, and tools can go wrong, especially when you're dealing with their their legacy software code with several layers of microservices, several repos, and it might look easy on the surface, but you find them that it takes actual engineering work for it to run well.
So what you bring up a really good point, right? In other words, if your clients get wind of the fact that like a lot of the coding that their service providers are doing is agentic coding, they may just wake up one day and go, can't we do that ourselves? If like those wise guys are so much more efficient because of agentic coding, maybe we should just pay for Fable 5, or to be fair, just to pay for 5.6 from OpenAI for ChatGPT, again, because subscription versus uncertainty, we can talk about that in a second too. But what is the deciding factor between them going, we'll just do this ourselves, or we don't have the level of expertise necessary to do it, in the same way that like I could give a guy or a gal who's really a good driver and is like super happy to go to the mall or go to the supermarket and pick stuff up. But if I give them a Formula One car, they're going to kill themselves. Do you know what I mean? They're going to drive that thing right into the wall. Yeah. So how do we figure out like what that tipping point is?
Yeah, actually, that's a good analogy, and
You can use it. I'm giving you that for free, by the way, and I can tell you must be an F1 fan because you smiled when I said it. So go ahead.
yeah. So that has always been a challenge, but as part of our process, step one will always be gathering their requirements. What do they really want to achieve when partnering with our business? And
Yep.
some of them can be easily built with AI, but the hard part with that is actually scaling and deployment. And one of I guess most of the partners that we have right now have actually used agentic tools in the initial part of their business, but they remain as POCs. They remain as and it gets to a point where they continue to iterate, they continue to prompt, and they get stuck somewhere. They get a difficulty in integrating something, a specific thing, and that's when they reach out to us, and that's how we can, and that's where we see the entire code base and how convoluted it gets when you're just there's already a fire and you're already adding fuel to the fire.
Right. So it's
On the front.
it's interesting you say this. I always love to work with people that have tried to do something first and not failed, but like found out like this is way harder than it looks. Do you know what I mean? In other words, you watch a guy play golf and you're just thinking he's swinging a stick at a ball, like the ball's not even moving. This has got to be, and there's a hole that's way bigger than the ball. I got to get it. It can't be that hard to do. And then you go out onto a driving range and you're like, oh, you're missing the ball. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not even close. I'm not suggesting agentic coding is the same way, but it's close enough. Yeah. So it's almost better for you, I would think, that people try to do this themselves and then go, oh, I think we need some help from those guys. No?
Yeah, that makes the discussion easier because they've already faced the challenges that they contracted us to solve for them, as compared to those who haven't exactly used the tool yet they already have conclusions on what they can achieve.
Can I ask you this? And again, just to hark back to something you said a few minutes ago, you said you're mostly using Codex, right?
Yes, sure.
Was there a decision that you made internally because Anthropic keeps going back and forth on whether they're going to change the way they price things for you, in the sense that, like, if you were confident that Fable 5 or even frankly Claude 4.8 was going to be subscription based for as long as you needed it, would you be using both tools, or is there a certain level of uncertainty that's associated with Claude where they're like, we're stopping this on July 20, sorry, you know what I mean? Like, they just keep changing the date where they're going to go from subscription to API based. Did that uncertainty impact the decision that you guys have made at PocketDevs or no?
Yes, definitely. For us, we've always worked with partners with a certain commitment on their like pricing structure, the kind of services that we get, and so far Codex has been consistent in that area. But that doesn't mean that we don't use Cloud Code.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Personally, I use Cloud Code in my hobby projects, but
yeah, but that's because you're a rich guy. Like, you're like, whatever, I can afford to pay for this. Like, I don't care.
Yeah, but again, it really depends on the kind of task that we're doing. We can't just be using Codex, or sorry, we can't just be using Fable for everything. Just like we always have this brown bag sessions with our teams on how to properly utilize each models. So we use the highest model first for like planning, and do the sub or lower models for the agents to do the actual implementations.
Okay, one more thing before I let you go is, do you ever consider using some of the open weight models? Now the Kimi K3 came out and it was rated super high for its coding stuff, and there's DeepSeek and all these other models out there. There are no restrictions for you from doing that in the Philippines. Have you considered that as well, just from a cost perspective, but even from a performance perspective?
Definitely. When DeepSeek launched last year, that was one of the first things we tried to take advantage on our business. But as frontier models get better and better, there's still discussions on costs and self-hosting your own models. And definitely what we're just taking a look at is our real world performance on these frontier models, if they're performable and so on. But given that we have these open weight models, definitely it's better for everyone, to have, or for Claude to have their competition.
Got it. Okay, Bryl, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. We really appreciate your time. Again, thanks for doing this.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay, Martin, let's hear from our second sponsor today. Third sponsor, actually. HCL Tech is supercharging progress with AI that moves beyond ambition and delivers real business impact. a recognized AI leader trusted by global enterprises to turn technology into transformation. HCL Tech, they are supercharging progress. Okay, Martin, let's bring in our next guest, Mayoran Rajendra. How are you doing today? Can you hear me okay, Mayoran? It's definitely good afternoon. I think it's good afternoon for both of us.
Yeah.
Look, it's great to have you here. We wanted to obviously have you come on the show to talk about how AI-driven banking can improve the quality, speed, and accessibility of financial services for business. But maybe for people that aren't 100% aware of SMBC, maybe give us a little bit of background there as well before we start.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure
Thank you.
to be here and introduce SMBC and what we are trying to do,
Awesome.
leveraging AI capabilities.
Mm.
So SMBC stands for Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation.
Mhm.
This is one of the largest financial institutes in Japan.
Yep.
So we have a full range of financial services, banking, securities, credit card, leasing, etc. And we operate in around like 40 regions across the world. So in Asia, Singapore is our regional headquarters, and also
Okay.
in Asia Pacific, we have 20 branches in all the countries in the region, and also leading the transformation from Singapore for the group itself.
Super duper. Okay. That's a good background. Obviously, I lived in Japan for 22 years, so very familiar with SMBC.
Yeah.
And it's all of its predecessor companies. Okay, let's just jump right into this. How are large financial institutions like SMBC approaching the implementation of AI in decision making and just like real world deal workflows? Like, what does it look like to you guys?
So, like any large organization, like a few years ago when the generative AI came, because needless to say, it's a broader, spectrum of capabilities. We started from data analytics, machine learning, deep learning, then the generative AI came, then generative AI, agentic AI, we are now. So in the spectrum of capabilities, let me focus more on the generative AI, agentic AI space in the context for
Please.
today's discussion.
Yep.
So like any other organization, not like a financial services, we started from exploring how we can automate, some of the processes, the repetitive work within the bank to using AI capabilities. But after 2-3 years, along with our own maturity within the organization, as well as the technology capability advancement, now we are in a point of thinking how we can use these capabilities to enhance the product and services that we are offering to our clients. And preferably, how can even we consider changing the business model of a bank, of a financial institute, because we don't want to kind of limit ourselves on simple automation or productivity or efficiency gains of existing workflows, processes, and how we are doing things. So that's where we are at the moment.
So what needs to change internally for that to happen? I have to believe that sort of generative AI looked like, hey, this could be fun for us to use, and maybe we can change some of the things we do, or at least become just more efficient. Then agentic AI pops up, like, let's say in February of this year. I don't know when you guys first started looking at it. And you're right, automation was probably the first thing that jumped into people's mind. But as you start to automate things, you think, wait a second, this workflow is no longer necessary because of the way agentic AI can handle some things in the middle. Maybe we need to change the workflow. And then people said, well, now we need to change the business model, because actually some of the stuff we're doing actually can be way better. So what did that look like? And then what is the outcome of some of those things? Are there business model changes that have happened, or are we still waiting for those internally?
So at least we started seeing, examples of the enhancements of products and services. I wouldn't call it like we started seeing the business model change itself. I think it'll take a little while. But beyond the simple automation of existing workflows and processes, we started seeing how we can improve our product and services, how we enhance the financial products that we're delivering to a customer, something different, something more, something better, to serve the customers, purposes. Let me give you an example, right? So, so as a bank, a primary, counterpart is the CFO of any organization. When I talk about a corporate banking,
Fair enough.
Let me separate the consumer banking and corporate banking. So let me focus more on the corporate banking for a moment. So our primary counterpart is going to be a CFO. And every CFO or the office of the CFO or the financial, planning and, accounting FP&A,
Right.
they have similar challenges like ourselves. Okay, how we can automate our processes of invoice processing or purchase orders, reconciliation, this, that. They have every corporate customer, every corporate CFO, they have a bunch of things that they need to automate. More than anything, they want to use more information, more data to get more insights to make better decisions. It's like a decision support.
Right.
But as a bank, we have the domain expertise in, accounting and finance in general. So we kind of bring our own domain expertise, convert them into, the agentic instructions. And we provide it as a value-added services to our corporate clients, corporate CFOs, for them to have, a decision support, some workflow automation within their organization, so they can have more seamless integrations with the banking products like remittance, FX, etc. So instead of like waiting for the customers to do their own processing, make the decisions, send an instruction to a bank for a remittance, we are now trying to proactively support our clients or help them solve their pain points in decision making or decision support, so the interaction with the bank would become a better experience, much smoother, which is, in our point of view, it's enhancing our product and services for a client. Same applies in the retail banking as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, both from a retail and corporate. Let's just stay on corporate, because if we go to both of them, I think we could be here for days at a time. In my experience, Japanese financial institutions have just been very conservative over time. I'm curious, like, what speed changes have taken place in their desire and also the effectiveness of deploying, whether it's generative AI or artificial or agentic AI. Like, has this put pressure on these CFOs, as you commented, to move a little bit away from this sort of traditional conservatism to say the world is changing faster than it's ever changed before? We also have to be faster.
That sense of urgency is, at least in our board level, because our CEO is, he interacts with so many different corporates, especially the CEOs of the software industry. So for him, our CEO, he made the comment in the board, like the sense of urgency that the software industry is having, it's going to, be the same for all the industries. The speed of change that we are experiencing is unprecedented, and it's going to, impact the banking industry, of course, and we need to cope up with the speed of change of our customers, because our customers are not going to wait for us to be ready. They would choose whatever the most, suitable or appropriate solution for them. So that the overall speed of change is, forcing us to move with speed as well.
Are we also finding that the CFOs are asking for more than just automated processes? You mentioned this before, that for your stuff internally, that it started with generative AI, it moved into agentic for automation purposes. But once people saw that, they were like, wait a second, maybe we need to rethink things. Are you seeing the same thing on the CFO, on the corporate CFO side that you're serving or with whom you're interacting? And on top of that, because things are moving so fast, as you suggested, are they also coming to you guys for advice? Like, we think we know what to do here, but you have more experience at this because you started earlier than we did. Can you advise us as well about how we're supposed to do this? And do the banks then actually turn into not advisory from a banking and cash management standpoint, but from a technology standpoint as well? In other words, telling not telling, but advising their clients like how they can use technology to make their businesses more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Both are happening. So I meet with customers like every day, meet with CFOs like literally every day. And last week I was in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, meeting with some C-suite, executives in various different industries.
Go for it.
So they are like very eager to do more scenario plannings because they need to make decision like import, export,
Yeah.
manufacturing planning and cash conversion cycle. There are so many variables they need to manage every day.
Right.
And in the traditional way, in the conventional way, they were constrained because of processing capabilities and manpower and everything. Now they started seeing that AI in general would help them have these scenario plannings, different variables, different combination of scenarios that they can consider for decision making. We started seeing that awareness as well as action. That is answer to your first question. The second one is also, in a way, it's a privilege that it's not. I always say that we are a bank, we are not a consulting firm, we are not a software company, but we ourselves going through this journey, we ourselves learn every day. The customers value that a lot more than I thought.
Yeah,
because
way
sometimes
more. So can I just interject
Yeah.
here? Like, I think your customers think about you as a software company, as a technical services provider at some level. I know that I do and again, I'm a retail banker, but like, I want my interaction via software, via the mobile platform that I use, to be as top-notch as possible. I want my bank at some level to be a tech provider. And I think your corporate clients are thinking the same thing, no?
Yeah, they do. And also like in hand holding or like think together with them, problem solving together with them based on our own experiences is something they value. And of course, and two dimensions, right? They want us to be the best, providing the best experience in their transaction. In addition to that, help them, handhold them, think together with them in their own transformation journey. I think that is a shift of how corporate bank is engaging with the client, because it's not like waiting for the customer to make a phone call for a corporate loan or through the internet banking, some remittance instruction coming. It's the bankers go and interact with the customers on their transformation journey. That itself, we started seeing the shift, and they are asking for our own experience of how we are doing it.
Right, because your exposure to corporates is bigger than theirs in a certain sense, right? Because they are not your only client. Let's say you have 1,000 clients, just like they are. So your ability to see things that they can't see, those things could be more voluminous for you than it is for them. And here's the other question too. If that's the case, I want to give you an example and tell me if you see this happening in your space as well. But there were times like a year, maybe 2 years ago, where insurance companies realized that they needed to provide like more services. So banking is different because banking is kind of an everyday thing. Money's moving every single day. Insurance is slightly different. But one of the things they realized was that people with car insurance, particularly if they had telematics, in other words, devices installed in their cars that gave out data, that if insurance companies could track that, they could say like, hey man, your battery may need to be replaced because it's so low. And even though it didn't impact the insurance price, it felt like something new that the insurance company was doing, and then engendered trust, right? So it felt like your auto insurance was providing more service than necessary. And I'm curious if you see this from a banking perspective as well. And I'll give you a little bit more context. Like, you have all this transaction data that your corporate clients are doing across multiple accounts and multiple verticals. And it may be easier for them to just lean on you and say, can you create a report for us about everything that's going on inside there, in a way, because you have the data. They have some of it too, but rely on you for that. And that could be like another entire business model for the bank, as opposed to just like, you know what I mean, making a spread on loans.
You already gave the answer. You already articulated what we are doing is precisely like I always say there are like publicly available information, purchasable information, and then the first party information.
Mm.
So most of the corporate clients, they are asking us as a bank to give them the insights of the combination of all three.
Yeah.
Because they know we have first party information.
Yep.
And also, we have access to many purchasable information from different reports, different, data providers. And of course, there is a sense of, reliability on the bank to identify the right data sources of the publicly available information.
Mm.
So the CFOs are asking us, like, provide us the insights, not just the data.
Yeah.
I think that's where we are trying to do by creating these, the ontologies and so on, to make it as an offering, as something that the consumers the corporate customers to consume the insights, not just the raw data, along with our financial products.
Right. So this ends up being like a two-sided thing, because if you're in charge of AI transformation at SMBC, in other words, you have this sort of internal facing role, but also an external or both, right? In the sense, and both of them should be symbiotic to each other in the sense that some external client could ask you for something like, that's a good idea. But then internally you could have some dude in some department or some lady in some department, in an office in Kyushu who says, like, how about this thing, which then could filter all the way back up to one of your clients in Vietnam. Are we seeing that type of stuff happening as well?
Absolutely. So we kind of put together an internal, we call it like a customer 360, or knowing more about the customer, both using quantitative numeric data with the qualitative information.
Right.
In old days, we used to call it as account plan, and getting the similarities, getting the insights, so you can, use it across, different clients. Of course, we are very mindful of data privacy and data handling, which is a given. But that's a good thing about using AI, is you can abstract them. You can use it at the meta level to share the insights and the decision support. So I see on both sides, what we are working internally on our risk management,
right?
The framework, the methodology is pretty much applicable for a customer-facing solution with different data points.
Yeah, exactly. What does governance look like to you guys now? Again, things are moving really quickly. It is a two-sided thing as well, right? Because if you're working with clients, they have to understand what the governance things are that you're working on, but also internally, people have to understand, like, particularly when it comes to agentic AI, how do you look at governance in the context of this AI transformation?
Yeah, so first of all, we are very careful about the use cases versus the usage of the appropriate capability.
Yeah, fair enough.
You don't need agentic for everything. There are so many things within the bank, those are deterministic.
Yeah.
And identifying the right, the very particular area, we are going to have these probabilistic agentic capabilities, and having the guardrails, having the evals, having the, and a reviewer to review and accept the result to move to the next step. So we have a very, very, comprehensive AI risk management, AI risk governance framework. But at the end of the day, what we are being careful is, if something is deterministic, keep it deterministic. Identifying the areas you definitely need the agentic / probabilistic like capabilities to solve a problem.
So I'm going to make a presumption here, so work with me. Hopefully this doesn't insult you. It's meant as a compliment. But if you put two like tech geeks in a room to talk about artificial intelligence, I'm considering you one of them and me the other one, we'll understand, at least from the get-go, like what you mean by a deterministic outcome and why it matters when you're using agentic AI and even generative AI. But I'm curious, like, what the knowledge is internally when you say to somebody, well, it's going to be slightly more difficult to use AI for that because we need a real answer. It needs to be deterministic as opposed to probabilistic. And they're like, what's the, you know what I mean? First of all, what's the difference? And second of all, I thought that's not what these things did.
No, I use a very simple language, saying, in banking, if you call it an account opening, a remittance, or a loan processing, what we are doing inside the bank is we collect a lot of documents, extract certain information from those documents, then we cross-check it with existing information, in the core banking, bank balances, etc. We cross-check with some sanction screen and we approve. So the part that extracting data points from a document, you need that generative AI capabilities.
Sure.
And then you review that. Once you have those, data points extracted, you are doing simple comparison. So the simple comparison, simple, IT capability is enough. Once you put it like that, I think so far people in my organization they try to understand it. Yeah.
Okay. I just think it's really interesting to find out like what stage most companies are at, and that's kind of why I asked that question. Look, I could keep you longer, but we've taken up enough of your time today. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Mayoran Rajendra, General Manager, AI Transformation Department, SMBC Group. Really great insights. So thank you again for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Martin, let's bring in John Paul Syriatowicz. How are you doing today? I am doing super duper. Thank you for the message, by the way, earlier today.
Correct.
A little meta, but I do remember names. Thank you again for joining us today, for taking the time. We wanted to talk to you, obviously, about how AI-powered content management and discovery help businesses deliver just more effective digital experiences. And before we do that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Squiz.
So Squiz is an Australian founded but global company. We produce a digital experience platform called the Squiz DXP, and it's used to allow people to build large websites, portals, and intranets. The types of organisations that we serve tend to be service organisations, so people like government sector, higher education, finance, utilities, those sorts of people. So it's generally people trying to serve some audience, and they're trying to make sure that they can either provide information or transact with those people by providing services more efficiently digitally.
Got it.
Our tool set makes it easy for them to build those experiences and manage and properly govern them. And obviously, those experiences are changing in the context of AI.
Yeah, for sure. How is AI changing the way these content teams you're helping serve or building tools for? How does it change the way they approach like visibility and discovery, which to me are like the two most important things?
Yeah. So obviously, digital experiences are increasingly becoming conversations. So as people use large language models, like you might Google something and you find Gemini responds, or you use a ChatGPT or some other tool, they're turning into conversations where you'll ask a question and you'll be given an answer and then you'll ask follow-ups. And some people might assume that that means websites are dead. They might sort of say, how's it all shifting? What is the purpose of the website in this context?
Yeah.
Of course, that's not correct. Websites are actually what's ultimately powering those digital experiences. So the AI tools that, such as a ChatGPT, for example, when it's answering a question, the content that's being used to answer that question has come from your website. Your website was crawled, the LLM was trained, and then that was used to answer a question. And if you're asking something that's contemporaneous, needs to be up to date, then obviously you need a follow-up question. So increasingly in the world of agentic AI, those tools will go and check your website in real time to go and get additional information. Now that means your website's now serving two audiences. One audience is still human beings, but the second audience is the bots and the agents that are crawling the site so that they can provide those new experiences in the different channels. And as you might imagine, that means we have to think about things a little bit differently. We need some different tools to help you build for those two different types of experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it's really different when you're thinking about how do I serve a machine and how do I serve a human. But one of the key things to me is that I'm just going to go like 6 or 7 years ago. I would look at a website and I'm like, that's not what these guys do anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like people put up a website, and this is true everywhere in the world. They put it up, they feel like it's done now. It's not a dynamic thing, it's a static thing. And they're like, that's the least important part of our business. Are we seeing that? Are we seeing that change, particularly in the context of the way, again, we mentioned this, the way content teams are approaching this, that they have to spend way more time either building processes that update their websites more often, or actually manually doing that as things change, because people are expecting that information to be like real, in a way, real time, if not just like a modicum of up to dateness.
100% you nailed it. Right, that is absolutely the shift. So as you're saying, it's changing your processes to be able to do it. Sometimes it's connecting to your business systems as well.
Right.
But when you do connect to your business systems, you've got to do it in a governed way.
So that,
you don't want the public having direct access to everything, right? You need to set the rules. What are you going to let them access? When? Why? How? You've got to manage that. And if you're asking people to update your content, are they doing it well? And are they making mistakes? So one of the real challenges that's been exposed is just how poor people's website content normally is.
It's terrible. Right? It's terrible. You can't say it, but I can say it's terrible. Because think about this. Can I just give you a little bit of inside baseball here?
Sure.
Before I bring a guest on the show, one of the first things I do is I want to make sure I understand their business. So I go to their website. Because I think like that's where they're explaining their business to me as a human. The agentic stuff we can talk. I'm not crawling anything, although we do have a business that does that too. But the point is that like I want to go to the Squiz website and be like, I need to be ready for John Paul when he shows up. I can't just do this off the top of my head. But sometimes I'll get to a website and I'll be like, I read the website. I still have no idea what this company does. Not yours. That's not my point. But you're right. It's scary out there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're quite right. Absolutely right. So one, you might go to our website to try to understand who we are, or you might go to your preferred LLM, or you might use Perplexity, Claude, whatever you're using, and you might go say, give us a description. What does Squiz do?
Yeah, I'd said, what does Squiz.net do? I can do that.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And you get certain answers. But if we want to influence that, so as an organization, if Squiz wants to be able to say, let's help control that message that's being published by those other LLMs while they're actually indexing our site, how do we do it?
Right.
And one of the ways of helping people do that is to help them look at their site through the context of questions. Right. So normally, if you think of websites people have built in the past, often they'd come to it from the context of user experience and design. So they'd sort of think around, what does the navigation look like? How pretty is it? Can I find the things that I'm going to find by using clicks? But there aren't any tools to help you look at your site through the context of questions. And so that's an example where there's actually a range of different problems. If you really want to make sure your content performs well with large language models, there's a range of different problems you have to solve. And one of the problems, the first one that I'll start with, is you need to be able to look at your site through the context of questions. So to give you an example of that, one of the things we help people do is we have a tool that when it indexes the site, it then poses thousands and thousands of questions that people might ask of your content. Right. So by analyzing your content, it assumes the way a user might behave. And then from that, it then identifies things like what might be contradictions in the content or ambiguities, which of course an LLM is going to struggle with. And then it will deprioritize your content and potentially rely on other people's content. But it certainly helps the content authors or the people responsible for the digital experience of a site understand, what do I need to focus on to make sure that I'm doing a better job of being able to answer those questions for people? Very, very different. So just like when you use the example of coming to another website when you're trying to understand what does that organization do, you've got your own framework for asking those questions. And they're often different to the framework that the marketing team was using when they were thinking of the website and publishing it. They kind of wanted to push you messages. But in the context of AI, the control's back in your hands as the user. You can ask the questions on your terms rather than having a marketing team push the messages out to you. That means you have to think about everything quite differently.
Yeah, and it's also bias. Like it could be some kind of recency bias. It could be like I could be in a bad mood and ask different questions. You know what I mean? And ask different questions.
Totally.
I'm not in a bad mood today, by the way. So lucky for everybody.
That's
it's rare. It's rare for me. I'm just kind of joking around. But here's the other thing. Does that mean now that website building, I want to get back to this getting ready for questions thing. I don't want to push that aside, but I think that's a bigger issue before we get to that though. Does that mean now that like you almost have to do dual duty at least when you're building a website and think like, how are humans going to interact with this? What does that UI or UX need to look like? And we also need to build it for the machine that's going to come here and ask us just a ton of questions that maybe we haven't anticipated. So that now you're building like a double website, even though it doesn't look like that to anybody who's actually looking at it. Does that make sense?
That's exactly what you need to do. And so there are a few different things. So again, you've got it spot on. That's exactly what you need to do. There are a couple of different things that need to be taken into account. One, your content needs to be good, but then the way you publish the content needs to be taken into account. So anyone familiar with website publishing, especially in a governed sector like government, for example, knows of a term called accessibility. You need to make sure your content is available to people who might be using screen readers, for example. But that's also true for the machines. So when an agent comes to access your content, if your content is not structured in a way that makes semantic sense to the agent while it's trying to understand your content, it's not likely to get the right meaning out of it. No. So you have to make accessible content. There's a win-win there. It helps the human and it helps the machine. You've also got to do a lot of bot management. So not all machines that are accessing your system are positive. Some are nefarious. They'll do all sorts of things like try to steal content. They'll also create different sorts of burdens on the way that your site performs if it's not managed well. So there are these different layers that need to be considered. Content is just one part, and yes, you are building for two audiences.
So when Squiz works with a particular client, how do you customize? And if you believe, and I like this framing that you've given to it. Like, you have to try to anticipate the questions that people are going to ask and build the site around that. And you're right. I've seen plenty of sites where, like, I'm just going to give it an example. Like on page 1, it will say something like, yeah, and the monthly charge for this is $7.99. You go somewhere else and it's like $12.99. You're like, which one of these things is right? That's just one example of how things can be inconsistent. But machines do not deal well with inconsistency. I mean, humans don't either.
Exactly.
The machines really don't deal well with it because they're just like, I give up, man. That thing's wrong. I'm going home. Whereas the human will,
or it just gives a wrong answer.
Yeah, just give the wrong answer.
Confidently gives an incorrect answer.
Yeah. You're right. That's the better response, because the machine is going to be like, I need to give some answer because I have a question.
Yep.
So I got to pick one, and maybe they pick the right one, the wrong. Who knows, right? But what they're not going to do is ask. They're going to call somebody. But how do you then customize what you do, right? Because what my website is trying to accomplish, and again, what, I don't know, pick something, what Salesforce's website is trying to do, completely different things. You must spend a ton of time customizing those thousands of questions. I presume there are some that are obvious and they're transferable, but others where it's just like completely different. Because somebody that's like working in the Web3 space is going to have a website that's very different than somebody that's working, in the like dog walking space.
Yep. So it's both more complicated and less complicated than it seems. So if I start with a less complicated way to make sense of it, first of all, if you think of, let's imagine you're dealing with a big website. So let's say you're a student working with a university, and you can imagine that when you do that, you've got lots of content. There's different faculties, different types of content. You might be a student, you could be a researcher, you could be different types of people. So there's lots of content to be dealt with for a start. Secondly, there's lots of systems to work with. You need to have hundreds of systems to work with, and some are authoritative and some aren't. And there's different types of things you can do on the site. You can search for things, you can fill in forms, you can go and compare offerings, you can do those sorts of things. Now, as you might imagine, there are different tools that you use overall to build a site like that. Integration tools, form builders, editing management tools, permissions, all those different sorts of things, right? In the same way, and this is where it gets a bit more simple, there are new tools that are being built that help you solve the problems with regard to the conversational and the AI workflows and those elements too. And I made reference to one. We call our tool Content Intelligence, but you get the idea. It's a tool that audits the site, the content within your site. It breaks your site down into topics. So semantically, it groups content into topics that make sense of what people might ask questions around. If you don't do that, it just becomes overwhelming for content editors to manage things. Then it will take a group of content, create these thousands of questions against it. So you don't have to create those questions. The tool, this power of AI, does it for you. Yep. And then it prioritizes and highlights what do you want to do something about. So it gives you a way of approaching the problem. Now, obviously, we talked about questions as one piece. The next piece that comes from that too is if people are now thinking about experiences from the context of questions, the next thing you need to think about is how do you actually build the experience itself from the context of questions. And so that the sister function that goes together with it is we call it conversational search, but it's essentially, it's the ability to have a conversation on your site and find information. We can search your content rather than using, one of the challenges of using a broad LLM is it will bring content that isn't yours into the equation. And most of our customers don't want that.
No.
You can imagine if you were using a government authority site and it started confidently giving you answers to something that were wrong, legally incorrect, and you relied on it, that would be a problem. So what you want to be able to do is bring modern experiences to people, but know that the answers are accurate and using your content specifically in those answers and controlling them. So I'm sort of layering up. I'm showing there's different types of tools that solve different parts of the problem. And by having those tools, you make something that is complicated simple.
So one of the things that a lot of people are implementing on their websites, and they've been doing this for a while, is like a chatbot that just sits there and says, like, do you have any questions for us? Right. I don't generally like I don't know. There's just something about it that doesn't feel like really friendly to me, but it's there. And I'm curious if that, by providing dynamic feedback to the business, that alone can actually impact the content that gets produced. In other words, you can use a tool to generate a whole bunch of questions, but there are edge conditions and things you may not have considered that the tool may not have noticed, right? But a client may ask you something on your website. You're like, we don't have any content for that necessarily. Does that then impact how that content gets created? And is there a way to create that content kind of on the fly if it's dynamic and in real time, so that, you know what I mean? So that client or potential client is not unfulfilled or unsatisfied.
Yeah, so you put a couple of different things in there. So first of all, that you're dissatisfied with chatbots, and the answer is yes. Chatbot experiences are generally dissatisfying, right? They are. So they're quite thin, and they're thin because, for a few reasons. One, we've already talked about the fact that the content on people's sites is rubbish. So if you're starting with content that's problematic, then it's not going to do a great job.
Right.
Also, people have expectations that they want to be able to do things when you ask a question, and so if you haven't set your website up to be able to transact and allow you to actually do things meaningfully, then it feels like a fairly surface experience. But then what you touched on as you kept on going is, are people even listening? Are they actually using what you've been, and is that being used to somehow improve the experience? And the answer is there's two ways of doing that.
Go ahead. One
way is to just use the analytics and then use that to improve the content on your site. But the second is to dynamically generate answers.
Yep.
But you need to make sure that they're going to be correct. And that's what we're doing now, right? We are dynamically generating those responses. There's a even newer level, which I think.
How do you make sure that they're right and that, you know what I mean, that there are no errors there, right? Because again, one of the problems with an LLM is that it feels like it has to answer something. Like, I've been on a chat with a human where I've said, like, how do I fix this thing, that thing, and the other thing? And they're like, I don't know, let me go find out. I like that answer, actually, because it at least means they're not giving me some sort of, malarkey answer, for lack of
100% agree. Well, the answer is you need a system that's designed specifically to manage that for you.
Yeah.
So in our case, we specifically designed the system to use your content. 2, we have actually a whole separate AI that reads answers, verifies that everything that's said in the answer is correct against the system. So we don't trust the AI. The AI works. We've designed it to be accurate, but we don't trust it. We have something we call a guardian agent, another tool that goes and reads the answer and verifies it, a little bit like a human being coming in and saying, hang on a second, that sounds like rubbish. And then and make sure you get the correct answer.
I cannot get away with saying rubbish. It definitely sounds better coming out of your mouth than it does from mine. I just cannot get away with it. But I want to know this too. You have plenty of low-code website creation tools out there. That up until, I'll say now, but I don't mean now, but up until this type of thing has changed, right? What's the impact on those businesses, do you think? And again, I don't need to name them all, but you know who I'm talking, like Squarespace and guys like that, where they spend all this time and all this money, custom, all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, that was built for humans creating websites for humans and SEO. Now, they may add tools to do this, but at some level, it's way more complicated now than it was before. Do those businesses still have a place, or are they going to radically have to change their business model as well to just keep up with this fast?
100%, they're going to have to evolve, absolutely, and they will evolve, right? So they will evolve. I think the point is there will be different types of tools for different types of organizations. So the sorts of people that a Squarespace serves has a different level of complexity compared to the sorts of organizations that we serve. And as a result, we have different tooling.
Sure.
So if you're dealing with a smaller organization, you might have one content author. Whereas the sort of organization we deal with has to somehow choreograph many people, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of people who are public. And so you need different tooling to be able to make that easy. You also have different best practices you need to follow. And the system needs to be opinionated on helping you do those things. So making those different types of roles and jobs for different organizations easier. I will say there's one other challenge.
Go ahead.
AI is making it easier for people to build sites. So what do I mean by that? So there's a lot of low-code tools for building sites, as you made reference to a moment ago. And some people are attracted to say, oh, I can build something super fast using these low-code tools.
Right.
What organizations pretty quickly realize, if you start following down that path a little way, is you start becoming a software house. You start coding your own software and you become an engineering organization that needs to start building all sorts of different systems and maintaining those different systems.
Yeah.
If you don't build something holistically and then have a view to managing it, you'll solve one piece of the problem. But when you do that, what you don't realize is you create another problem somewhere else down the chain. And so the sorts of organizations that realize how complicated this can become and how quickly it is are attracted to platforms like ours, where they're saying, I need good governance, I need security, I need easy maintenance, I need to look after everything from accessibility to AI performance to good user experience.
I mean, I would suggest to you that the entire nature of a website is changing. And one of the points that I wanted to make, right, is that even for the smaller, like you said, one guy or one gal just doing content, they're going to, like, even when Google in the old days used to change like some of their algorithms for SEO, those websites would literally like lose traffic almost in a way that was catastrophic. But now they run into two problems. One is they don't just have an SEO problem anymore. Now they have an agentic AI problem. And this is why I think that businesses like Squarespace, and again, nothing against them, I'm not like picking one particular thing, but that's just like sort of the metaphor, or the you know, the example of all these companies where they were building a very sophisticated business for one thing, and now overnight it just changed.
I agree with that.
Even for small websites, right? Sorry, go ahead. And then I'll let you go.
No, I agree with that. I think they have one other challenge. A lot of the sites that they're building are sites where the content itself is not necessarily novel or authoritative. They may be republishing information or using it. And those sites in particular are vulnerable to AI and large language models just disrupting them. You don't need to exist unless you're contributing something new and valuable.
I agree. Okay, John Paul, excuse me. John Paul, thank you so much for coming and doing this today. Really great stuff. One of the fastest 20 minutes of my whole life. Actually, we went over a little bit. That just shows you how interested I am. Thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, bye for now. Okay, Martin, let's bring Janet in now. Janet. I am great. Where are you based, just out of curiosity?
I just heard you're based in Bangkok, which is my old stomping ground. Lived
We
there
can talk
10
about that
years.
too, but I feel like this is a very Sydney and Australia-based show today. I don't know why.
Yeah?
I don't know why, but I'm happy to have it. Look, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Love the t-shirt, by the way. You may want to like do this just a little bit so everybody can see the lab word, not just the footprint part. Perfect.
There we go.
We wanted to have you on because we wanted to talk about how credible AI-enabled carbon data is, and it was just a matter of time, right, before somebody had to do this, is helping businesses reduce their reporting risk and making better sustainability choices. Tell us a little bit about FootprintLab.
Yeah, sure. So FootprintLab is all about data, the impact behind all of the products and services around us. And we provide environmental insights, we provide labor insights, social insights about every step of that supply chain. And that can then be embedded into financial data workflows or any other kind of digital economy workflows. There's so many things coming up which we can get into.
Yeah, do that. Because can you give us a little bit more detail here? When you say it's being embedded into the workflows, maybe let's just dig deeper and say, like, how is it being applied to solve the measurement side of this and the reporting stuff? And I have to presume at some level, the data that's out there, that's not your own, right? That's not first party data, has been quite fragmented even today. And that organizing that data is one of the things that we do. But then there's the internal stuff as well. So maybe you can walk us through that slowly.
Exactly. And actually, even before that, why do we do this? That's why does everyone need to measure this? So I'll just explain why we have to do some carbon reporting.
Do you want my microphone? Because you have better questions, actually. Maybe I should just give it to you.
I don't know. I certainly not. I would never be able to do your job.
Go ahead.
But go ahead. The reason we do it to begin with is because when a government sets a net zero target, right? They say we've got to decarbonize. The first thing that they have to do is figure out where all the carbon is coming from. So it's just like if you go on a weight loss or something like that journey, first you have to measure where the calories are coming from. And so the way it's been working in the past is the poor sustainability teams in companies, they sit there and they try to become accountants, and they have to gather data about every little thing, compile it, and then disclose it. So now what's happening is, we're thinking, why put them through all of that when you can just automate it? So instead of bringing the financial data to sustainability, we'll bring the sustainability data to financial data. Yeah.
Can we make the case that for companies large and small, that the systems that they put in place originally just to run their business were not built for understanding actually what was creating the carbon, and that at some level before FootprintLab and other companies like this existed, that they were not, I wouldn't say guessing, but they were making educated guesses around like where it was coming from. I know they had to do reporting. I understand that. I understand where governments have to make all these I get that too. But there must be some level of guesswork, again, because even internally the data had to be fragmented. But now that artificial intelligence is out there, can do a much better job of gathering that data so that they don't have to rework all of their systems. I presume there's some data work that has to get done too, but like, how do they end up doing that?
Absolutely. In the past, it was more qualitative. Do you have a plan? Are you recycling? It's kind of like binary, yes, no, and then maybe some qualitative description.
Right.
And the reason that they would do that is because they might have buyers, whether those are other businesses or end users, households, governments, that wanted to know these things, or they wanted to see that they were buying something sustainably. But now it's actually a different purpose. It's more just to get the numbers right so that people can make educated choices. And we actually also need better data for all of those, I'd say, AI or data-driven decision support systems out there. And so the advantage, there's all sorts of data out there, and there's really exciting efforts through the UN, through different governments to make all of that data interoperable. AI goes a long way, but it's not the only thing. But before that, there are many types of environmental data. You can get data about each product specifically, or you can get estimates about everything and everywhere.
Right.
So it sort of depends. There's all data qualities, all data hierarchies out there. Yeah.
A bunch of stuff is going to come from this. You talked about interoperable, and I'll use the word standardized as well. Are we at the point now, or should we get to the point where, similar to accounting, and it's different in every country for sure, but there are accounting standards boards, and in the United States, I still think it's called GAAP, so generally accepted accounting principles, and every country has to report their financials based on GAAP. Yeah, they can do other reporting, but they're like, this is not, GAAP accredited, but here are our GAAP numbers. Are we seeing the same thing in the sustainability space on the data, where particularly now that if we have better access to the data, better ways to organize it, that there should be some sort of standardized way to present this so that company A's environmental data or data looks the same as company B's?
It's changed very much over the past few years. So yes, so now there are international standards for disclosure, and then each country can then develop national standards that are compatible with that. And so if you've got an investor that's looking at an investment in Indonesia versus one in Thailand, and you need to minimize your climate risk or your exposure, you could, if those two companies are reporting on the same frameworks, you can then compare like with like. And the stock exchanges are actually playing a bit of a role to harmonize the data frameworks that are used for their listed companies. But the more exciting thing, I think, and this is where, when I look at AI and what it can do, AI is only as good as the data that it can interact with, right?
Of course.
So what's happening now is this quite radical traceability or transparency movement, partly led by certain governments. The EU, Singapore are very active, but coordinated by the UN. And it's called the UN Transparency Protocol. And what it is it's designed to be a way of organizing information that in a way that can connect between countries. So this sort of interoperability, that when you have information about a product or that's traded, or a company that's transacting over borders, that the information doesn't get lost at the border. It's embedded or it's sort of anchored into that financial transaction. And so what the UN Transparency Protocol is doing is saying, well, there are so many sustainability standards, but if we have some core vocabulary and taxonomy, then it doesn't really, we can understand each other. You can use different units, you can use different metrics, and they will be able to be rolled up even when you're crossing between borders. So that's really helpful to get this sort of radical transparency that is coming through the EU, called digital product passports, for instance. So textiles are going to have their own passport.
Yep.
Where that data from all those steps in the supply chain will have to be embedded into that passport, either in some machine readable or some sort of barcode method.
What does this necessity for traceability do from a cost perspective to companies both large and small, right? In other words, it's always seemed to me that implementing a sustainability policy, particularly one that uses technology, is easier in relative terms for large companies that have bigger budgets than it is for small companies. What is the sort of trade-off that we're making there?
Well, sustainability is only one benefit to all this. So I'll give an example of where we're working in the region. We're working with a bank in Cambodia called Wing Bank.
Yep. I know.
A lot of an innovative bank, great, great with tech. A lot of their business customers are small garment manufacturers in Cambodia.
Makes sense. Yep.
Garments, apparel are first in line to need these digital product passports. And so if those garment manufacturers, if they want to sell into the big brands, H&M, Levi's, etc., and if they're not able to provide sustainability data, then they may lose that export market share to neighboring countries that can do it. Right. And so it starts to be a cost, it starts to be a risk of losing revenue or a barrier to entry. So Wingbank has said, well, why don't we just embed that data into the business accounts, and that way it's just a click of a button.
So they're providing that service to the people with whom they're doing their corporate, I'll say corporate, but their business banking system, so that cost doesn't then filter down to the smaller garment providers that exist in Cambodia. Do I have that right?
Exactly. And it's absolutely, it's not a complex workflow.
No, it shouldn't be.
It's A times B equals C. The trick is just matching the right environmental metric with the right transaction category. And that's where other standards like, SWIFT, ISO 20022 or any of these other digital economy standards, they come in because they make it really easy to understand transactions and then layer in additional insights into them because they have nice taxonomies.
What kind of business processes do companies have to put in place so that, every time they build a new product, they have to put it into this entire process as well, right? And understand what the carbon footprint is. if you have one product or two products, if your company's not that complex, you don't have to really worry about it. You can do it kind of on an ad hoc basis. But like if you're a consumer goods company creating a new soap or a new diaper or a new whatever, and if you're a garment company building a new t-shirt or getting a new supply, like all these things will potentially change what your carbon footprint is, but also change your product output. What types of processes have to be put in place for them to understand, like, okay, we have a new product, but we need to make sure that it's plug and play so it doesn't add extra costs on top. And that cost can be time, it can be whatever on top of this. Are companies doing that as well?
Yeah, our aim is that it's not the producer, the manufacturing company that does this. It should be the service provider that's already managing the money and the ERP, let's say. So if there are already systems in place to understand how many of which types of materials they're using, how much electricity, etc., how much the product costs, then it should be automated. It shouldn't be an additional cost. Right now it is.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work. That essentially puts a tax on those who are trying to demonstrate that they have an environmentally better product. It should be the other way, you know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about how that would work, right? And that's why I asked that question. It's like every time you come up with a new product, you could have a different supplier. You could have somebody who's not part of this value chain that's already measuring or has the right data in place to do the environmental data. And at some point, it's going to filter down to every part of your business. So I was just wondering, like, I'm a process guy, always have been, and I just wonder, like, what kind of process has to be put in place so that every new thing you do doesn't require reinventing the wheel for that product, but it just fits into everything else that you do without taking away your ability to innovate. Yeah.
Well, suppliers, you might change a supplier, but supplier specific data isn't necessary. So there's a bit of a trade-off between the data burden and the cost. So if you want to have a specific number for every specific unicorn piece of a material that's used, that's fine, but it's not actually necessary. What you need is a number that's relevant to the country you bought it from, the type of product it was, how much you paid for it, and what year it was. And for that, there's a number for literally everything. We have trillions of data points that are available. So there's no shortage of data. What there is a shortage of is the connectors with the already very digitized, very highly organized data behind these businesses, what they're spending the money on, what they're using in all the materials and all the products.
Got it. Yeah. So now that we have the facility to do this at scale and in a way that's automated, have we learned anything about, because before you said the way that carbon stuff was reported was not mostly, but like there was a qualitative aspect to it. And again, the more procedures we put in place, the more data we understand, the more quantitative it becomes. Have we learned things? Had we been making mistakes before, which are understandable, because we're doing qualitative stuff. We're judging things as opposed to measuring things. Have we learned new stuff and thought, okay, that was not what we thought, and then we have to change something or some things because of the fact that we have access to better data?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's now, I think it's a lot of it's come down to standardization and everyone just being clear, what numbers are we talking about? So those are the main things. So before, you just didn't know if someone said that they had it was 8 and someone else was 12. You actually don't know, are they including every part of it? You know, you just didn't know. The main thing that we've learned is that we just want to know for a specific kind of product, and they're all, they've all got a category according to Comtrade and International Statistics Classification. Everything has a category. For that category, what is the carbon footprint? And, if it can be, if the data is traced to the financial data, it's really nice. It's very auditable. It can be very transparent. If you keep it in a black box, not so much.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I used to do an entire podcast that I called, it was all on sustainability. So I've done a lot of work on this, but one of the reasons why I stopped doing it specifically was because I found it hard to get more and more people to talk about it over time. I'm wondering, as you continue to build this business, are people still as passionate about this as they were, let's say, like 6 or 7 years ago?
Yes and no. I'd
Go ahead.
say the people that are paying for it,
For
they're way more
sure. Sure.
they're paying.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, people used to be really passionate about sustainability and want to get some the right numbers around it. No, the people that are paying for it are more interested in risk. They don't want to lose access to government contracts or big global supply chains because this is a barrier to entry.
Yeah, for sure.
So it becomes risk that you can't sell, but it's also the more carbon footprint you have in your supply chain, the more exposed you are to certain kinds of risk that can be quite disruptive. So if your carbon footprint comes a lot from fossil fuels, you can see what happened due to conflict in Iran, that the price of certain types of fossil fuels went way up.
Yeah.
Happened as well when due to conflict in Russia. So there's a lot of risks tied up in carbon footprint that are just standard business logical, makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
Kind of stuff, yeah.
I think that's getting more the geopolitics, that risk. I think that gets the CFOs a lot more excited than, and they're far more empowered in businesses than a chief sustainability officer usually. So.
Yeah, the only problem is it's way less under their control. In other words, the price of West Texas Intermediate oil coming out of the Middle East, and again, it's not a show about geopolitics, but we do understand its impact on finances globally. Is that's impossible to control, but you can control, as the name of your company suggests, your carbon footprint. That's a lot easier to do, particularly if you're using services that allow you to understand like what the quantitative value is that's associated with it. Does that make sense?
Well, let's say you're based in Thailand, so a lot of the energy there is coming from hydropower. So if you wanted to de-risk yourself from fossil fuels and the carbon footprint that comes from it, you might want to shift your part of your supply chain to countries that have a much lower reliance on fossil fuels and that can generate electricity using renewable energy.
Yep, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Look, fascinating conversation. I'm really glad we have you on. Thank you very much for spending time out of your busy day with us, Janet. I really appreciate it.
Loved it. Thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you. Bye for now.
All right. See you later.
Martin, let's bring Manit in as well. Hello, Manit. How are you? I am super duper. Give us just one more second to bring you into the main screen. I'm losing your audio. Can you say something again for me?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
There you are. Okay. So, founder and CEO at the Binary Holdings. What is it?
That's right.
Okay. Maybe tell us a little bit about your company and what it does and its important work, and then we can just jump into our conversation.
Sure. So the Binary Holdings is an AI infra group that embeds discovery and monetization infrastructure inside and underneath the apps of telcos, e-wallets, and banks across emerging markets, turning their behavioral signals into intelligence. Within that, we have something called Binary Labs, which is our AI lab, where our partners across telcos, e-wallets, and banks, they build and run their own models on top of that intelligence to make their own decisions. So this is in a nutshell what the Binary Holdings is all about.
So how is ASEAN telecom infrastructure evolving to support all this growth in the digital economy?
So what's happening is even today, all the telcos are still focusing on 5G rollouts, connectivity across the country, and that continues. I don't think that's ever going to stop as they keep evolving the networks. But what's become more important and critical for all of these guys is now, how do you monetize the digital infra that you've built where all these millions of users keep coming in? So I think that is where they've also kind of realized that they cannot build everything in-house. And hence they're looking for partners who can come in and assist them in their journey of converting an engaged user into a transactional user beyond just airtime top-ups or data top-ups. And that is where they have gaming companies, they have content-based companies. They're all coming in and plugging in their media within these platforms so that the consumer is able to gain and get much more. And it does multiple things. When you play a game or you watch content, you
Yep.
end up burning your data a lot faster.
Yeah,
So
for
there is an
sure.
uplift in ARPU for the telco. Similarly, there are partners like us who capture behavioral signals to give the intelligence back to them to then build their own models on how to keep growing that particular engagement and monetization for them. So I think that's where the ASEAN digital infra is kind of moving beyond traditional enterprise networks.
So when they're double focusing on 5G or 6G or whatever the next like really big infrastructure rollout is, where are they focusing this ability to monetize stuff, as you said, monetizing their digital infrastructure? Because as you said before, like in the old days, the telcos were sort of just like dumb pipes in a way. And then they realized, wait a second, we have, in Thailand, the biggest mobile phone company has, I don't know, like 60 or 70 million, almost everybody in the country, because there used to be 3 phone companies, now there are 2 really.
Correct.
But they have like millions, tens of millions of users, and now they're trying to find ways to monetize it. Where are the places that they're really focusing besides games?
So besides games, they're monetizing very heavily on advertising. Number 2.
How does that work though? In other words, I'm not always on my phone, and
Sure.
and the telcos don't have access to every app on my. Do you know what I mean? So where does the advertising pop up, or where does it come into? How are they affecting that?
So it's technically all within their ecosystem. So when you open up your telco app, for example, in that you're spending around 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes. So they have a lot of micro ads, which are up to 4 seconds, 3 seconds, because attention span of the user is reducing every year as we speak. So when you have a smaller format advertisement, the crux for the telco for monetizing advertising is 2 seconds or more. If they're able to get the user to spend 2 seconds or more, that is when they are getting the impressions on basis of which they're advertising. But it's
Right.
within their ecosystem. But unfortunately, what's happening is they do not have enough real estate on their platform to display those engaging advertisements because it needs you to actually move away from your traditional behavior of top-ups and go to other different buttons within the telcos app to access all of this. So unfortunately, while that has become another way for advertisements, they are still advertising very traditionally from banner sales, to be very honest, right?
But where
That is
where
their
the
current
where do the
way of
banners go?
advertising. Banners go on the home page. They have banner displays. Then they have in different pages. They have on when you make a payment, the after the post payment success page, they have banners out there. So these are all the real estate that they are selling to their partners or their enterprise customers who want visibility or clicks on those banners.
I must be doing something wrong because I don't see those banners at all. Like, is this
It varies from
in the
telco to
telco
telco.
app? Say again.
It varies from telco to telco. Some
Yeah.
telcos are very vanilla, and some
Yeah, for
telcos are
sure.
a little bit more forward.
The one thing you made me think, you heard me typing, yeah, so sorry about the noise that it was making,
problem.
but one of the fastest growing, I think, to me, ad businesses in the region is Grab ads, right? So Grab is a mobile application. Obviously, it's a it's a super app. Obviously, you've heard of it. Their ad business is now on an annual run rate of $236 million, according to the Gemini machine, and growing 45% year over year. So that's a gigantic business. How do the telcos compete with that when I could be in Grab like 3 or 4 times a day on purpose? And when I'm in the Grab app, I'm in it like for a long period of time. I'm waiting for my ride to be confirmed. I'm looking at it for the price. I'm like, oh, I didn't get a car. You know what I mean? I could be there for like 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
There's an ad and it's dynamic, so it keeps changing. I don't like that experience, but it's been successful for them. How do the telcos
Correct.
compete with that?
So what happens is telcos, I don't think, need to compete with Grab ads from the formatting perspective.
Yeah,
But
and remember,
what they
Grab
need
is
to-
just an example. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anybody for that matter.
Yeah.
I think the biggest complex problem the telcos are facing is discovery.
Yeah, for
Discovery
sure.
is a major problem, right?
Yep.
I think you solve discovery as a problem. This problem of advertising revenue becoming a multi-million-dollar avenue will automatically get solved. Because today, like any other platform, any platform which has a content library of hundreds or more items, discovery becomes a very difficult component. When
Yeah.
you solve the discovery problem in a way where the consumer doesn't have to search, but it's just click, 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 and you are there at that gate or in that shop within the telco's application, your life becomes a lot easier. Moment your life becomes easier, it becomes a part of your day-to-day DNA, where you'll come into the telcos app probably instead of 3 times a month, you'll come in 8 times a month. That 8 times a month is an incremental 100% growth, number one, of the consumer coming in. And then that particular discovery mechanism, which is making it simpler, I'm able to now access 10 things, 20 things compared to 3 things or 4 things that I was doing because of discovery problem. And I give my classic example. I'm from Thailand and I'm living in Thailand. When we open up AIS or True, 90% of the things are in Thai. It's extremely difficult for a non-Thai native or reading or speaking consumer to actually go to where they want to go. And that is what discovery becomes as a problem. And I think the crux, as you asked, if they solve discovery, they will start monetizing every digital arm of their business, including advertising.
So give me where are telcos actually succeeding at this, and how are they handling discovery in a way that's maybe different than the experience that you and I are having? I'm also based in Thailand.
So right now, the problem is I can't comment a lot on the Thai telcos, but I can comment on the telcos where we work very actively.
Yeah, for sure.
So in Indonesia, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and all Ethiopia, Africa, and all these markets, the easiest or the most consumed way of creating discovery for a user is banner placements and splash screens. So every time you open up an app, there will be a splash screen that will come on your screen. It's like a pop-up. It'll come on your screen. You click on that, and it will take you. That's the current, and push notifications and SMSs. These are the current avenues through which the telcos are trying to create discovery. But I think you and I both agree these are archaic. They don't work anymore as much.
No.
And people are not interested in things like these anymore because they're not adding great value to their life. If I have to come in and click on an ad every day or a banner every day, that's not fun. But if there is something which becomes a part of my lifestyle, a part of my DNA, then I'll be forced to come in because nobody else offers me that kind of a medium of discovery compared to the others.
Is there a loyalty aspect to this as well? In other words, I'm not changing my phone service provider. I don't have to tell you who it is, but I mean, there are only 2 of them. One of them is like double the size of the other one.
Correct.
That's probably not true, but fact, it's bigger than the other one. So you can make a guess about who it is. And I've had the same one for the entire time that I've been living in Thailand. But I don't feel like I get any benefits. And again, you don't have to comment on Thailand per se, but you can comment on other countries. Indonesia's fine. But is there a loyalty aspect to this as well? Where like, if you do this, if you click on an ad, you get points, and those points accrue for something that's associated with either airline purchase or something even associated with your phone bill. Like next month, you get 100 baht off or 100, whatever it is, 10,000 rupiah off kind of thing.
So yes and no. Yes, because the loyalty of not switching a subscriber is purely from a convenience perspective. Like, for example, I use one of the 2 as well, as you outlined. I've been using them for the last 7 years, and I don't want to change because I'm happy the way the service is. So I'm very happy,
I'm not
and
changing.
I really don't bother. Exactly. But number 2, but loyalty from a loyalty points mechanism is not as successful as they would have liked to, because a lot of the products that you can use the loyalty points for are within the realm of the telco's ecosystem. So telco will give you a hoodie of there with True or AIS or IOH or any other telco's branding on top. You'll wear it once, you'll wear it twice, but you're not going to wear it as if you would wear a Patriots or a Manchester United jersey. Number 1. Number 2, a lot of the other the points that you can redeem are for vouchers, like a 20% discount on an ice cream at Swenson's or 30% somewhere else. That is where. And number 3, you can buy packs like for half a day, for 30 minutes, for 1 hour, 2 hours. Great for micro consumption patterns.
Right.
People who are using it. But for people like you and I who understand the loyalty mechanism and we are high paying customers, we do not get much benefit out of it. And our loyalty, as I said, is not because of the things that we get from the partner, but it's purely from a convenience angle. And trust me, since I'm saying this, telcos are changing, right?
Yeah.
They are changing drastically, and they've understood that their loyalty systems is 2 things. It's number 1, archaic, and number 2, it's a massive cost sitting on their books, liability, because they can only convert that liability or move it at the end of the year when they close the books. Otherwise, a liability sitting on the books, which leads to a massive opportunity cost that they are unable to kind of extract. So
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is the
this
three
is
things.
this is one of the things that the airlines have learned, right? This is why they have the mileage programs. Those are also huge liabilities on their books. They either run off or they encourage people to use them so that
Correct.
those liabilities run off their books.
Yeah.
Where does all this stuff come into play from an infrastructure perspective on the e-wallets and banks? Like, what do we miss? We spend a lot of time talking about the telcos, but where does it play out in the e-wallets and the banks as well?
Same scenario. The e-wallets and banks, same habit patterns. When you go to a bank account, you're going there with the preconceived mindset of making a payment or making a transfer,
Right.
or or you bump into your rewards and you see, oh, I have 80,000 points. Let me see what I can do with that. That's the max. Beyond that, you're not doing anything. That is where discovery is again a problem in those outlets as well. Similar problem with e-wallets as well. I'll give you an example of True Money. I use True Money in Thailand. It's an e-wallet. When I go to that e-wallet, the only thing that I end up doing from that wallet is make a payment or top up my balance. Why? Because everything else, there is so much stuff within it that I get lost beyond a certain point of time. And a lot of the things are in Thai. So again, I lose out on the opportunity of understanding or knowing what benefits are coming across my way. So I think this is the same underlining problem that a telco has, the e-wallet has, and the bank has. The only difference is in an e-wallet and compared to a e-wallet to a telco and a bank, the e-wallet is a little bit more progressive from a gamification perspective,
Well,
from a
yeah.
look and feel perspective compared to a bank and a telco. That's the only difference.
But here's the thing for me, and again, everybody's experience is different, but I interact with my bank every single day. And sometimes more than once a day. As a matter of fact, many times more than once a day. Right? I mean, if I buy 4 things a day, well, I'm interacting with my bank 4 times that day, right? But like, are they also running advertising businesses on the bank app and I just haven't noticed?
No, so their advertisements, I mean, some of the banks do run advertisements, but advertisements are in form of placements. So in the reward market, they have their own reward store. In that, if you want to put something, that's a real estate that is being sold. So it's a market, it's a advertising or marketing based real estate play out there. Similarly, if you end up noticing a third party coming into a SCB, which is Siam Commercial Bank application or any other bank, they're paying for it precisely
Yeah, for
because
sure.
that is, yes. So that is how they're playing the advertising game. Now coming to e-wallets, e-wallets definitely have a lot more advertising, almost similar to a telco compared to a banking app, because they are number one addressing a larger audience base, which is consuming their platform more than once a day. So advertising is there. But now the advertising that we spoke about Grab, is very different how they do it in e-wallets. It's more banner placements. It's more real estate based marketing. So this is where all these guys are making. You will not see a dedicated video panel where content videos are playing or ads are playing, which you can click like a TikTok and then will open up a commerce shop. I don't think they've gone there. They want to go there. Don't get me wrong. They all want to go there. And I can tell you this with a surety because we are working with these guys, most of these guys in the Asian markets, and we are understanding where they want to go and how they want to adapt because that is where their audience is also moving.
Yeah, I mean, is there a way for all 3 of those things to be connected to each other? In other words, if you're working with telcos, if you're working with e-wallet companies, so I know like True Money, I get it, but there are other ways to pay on your True phone and frankly on your AIS phone as well. And the banks, they're all integrated into this ecosystem. Is there a way to connect them and just make everything more efficient for them that you could do on the back end from an infrastructure perspective?
Interoperability, right? Interoperability. I mean, just a simple model of Star Alliance or Sky Team rewards. They've created an interoperable model where I can exchange any partner within the Star Alliance network. I can transfer my points or I can convert my points for that particular airline or for that particular ticket. But there's a price associated to it. Unfortunately, in the telcos or e-wallets and banks or in a country when you combine, payments can become interoperable within the country and outside the country. I think a lot of the e-wallet and banks are working towards that by creating a P2P environment where payments can be made across markets. Now let's come to loyalty points. Loyalty points is also a medium of payment. The moment you make your loyalty point acceptable in a True Wallet, for example, or accessible in AIS platform, which is not your platform as a True, it becomes interoperable. And that is where the telcos don't need to interact with each other. The infra that is powering the entire ecosystem, which is the common denominator across these multiple partners, becomes that interoperable exchange model who is then controlling the way loyalty points are moving within the systems.
Mm.
And that is where it becomes truly a unified ecosystem for a consumer. And everybody in this, at the top line, everybody in this entire ecosystem benefits from top to down and down to top, because everybody is getting a share of everyone's consumer base without losing their own consumers.
Got it. What is the biggest technological or infrastructural challenge you have here? And then I'll let you go.
The biggest challenge is because we work in emerging markets and we work with telcos whose technical stacks are not all the same. Some are good, some are subpar. That is where the biggest challenges arise. So accordingly, we have to figure a way out on how to build a model or an infra which is plug and play across every partner rather than we trying to tweak. I think that's the challenge. We figured it out and we've been able to go through it very quickly. But again, different challenges will always pose different technological integration challenges and limitations.
For sure. Okay. Wow, that was fast. Manit, thank you so much for coming and doing this today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take
Okay,
care.
Martin,
Bye-bye.
let's bring in Stefan now. Stefan. Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me?
I can. Super duper. Look, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We wanted to have you on to talk about how agentic product intelligence is helping businesses make just more accountable and clearer product decisions. Tell us a little bit about Product Signal, though, before we jump in.
Well, thank you for having me, Michael, and Martin, of course. Well, about Product Signal, I launched it on 4th of June. It's
This year.
This year, yeah, like
that's not that long ago.
Yeah, that's not that long ago, actually.
Go ahead.
But I was preparing it for the last few months. Actually, my idea was because I have seen how many product teams and their decisions are not very clear, like when it comes to strategy, reasoning, why certain decisions were made, what was the reasoning behind those decisions. So I actually got an idea to create my own startup.
So what changes? Like, are you using any artificial intelligence in your system as well?
I'm planning to introduce slowly. My first step, like first phase, was to actually build a clear system for decisions documenting, so that the users, like product managers, owners, and so on, can revisit those decisions to remember why they were made, to improve upon them. And that was my first phase. Now, second phase, I will slowly introduce certain AI features, which will help basically in automating certain tasks, like with user research, with document summary, sending reports, and so on.
What are some of the biggest problems that you're trying to solve when product designers are trying to create, as you would say, like the right signal for their products so people actually want to go out and buy them?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to actually all the decisions that are made in one team, whether it's a founder, product manager, researcher, designer, or developer, they can collaborate on this platform, and they can revisit every decision, because the reasoning behind every product decisions is important, but it can be changed depending on the goals of that product, of that team at that very moment.
Are we convinced, and again, this is more like a question for my own business, but are we convinced that successful products are always a result of this process that you're talking about? Do you know what I mean? Of actually getting data from what customers want, actually going out and understanding like why certain decisions were made. Or is it sometimes the case that it's a little bit serendipitous, if you know what that means? That it just kind of like, I have an idea for a product because it's something that I want to use. Or Martin has an idea for a product because it's something that he wants to use. We develop that product, and then boom, everybody wants it. There's without much attention being paid, to the research and stuff like that. Or is it more likely that a product's going to survive? Succeed if not only we do the research behind it, but we also understand why we decided to do what we did.
Yeah, that's a good question. I firmly believe that product will be successful if it listens to their users and customers. Yes, sometimes those two things that you mentioned can correlate, but in my opinion, that is why strategy and research exists.
Got it. Can I ask you this? So you haven't implemented this, but what would change? Or what is the expected change when, whether it's generative AI or agentic AI, get involved or become an active participant in product design and product decisions, rather than just being like a passive tool, or rather than just having humans alone try to go out and analyze all this data? What changes?
Yeah,
Why is it, or is it better, or why is it better?
Well, I think that product design and designers will have more strategic role, because they will be able to delegate certain tasks to AI agents or AI assistants. So they will be mostly focused on like big picture, like strategy, aligning business and company's goals and so on.
And do you think this is going to elicit like better product design or more successful product design in and of itself? Like, is it enough of an efficiency gain that it's going to change the way people actually do design products or even iterate around products?
Well, I think that actually the bar for making products like software development, applications, and so on is lower than ever. So in my opinion, people who become really, really good and who master product design and strategy will prevail and will be among the best in software development. Because everybody can make more or less certain softwares now. I have seen that on Twitter, on X.
What is that?
Some people have like 7 startups there.
Yeah, but I think those are edge conditions. I would say this. I mean, X notwithstanding, I don't dispute the fact that you can have an individual start employing a bunch of AI agents to create code and to do research and then to do marketing and all this other. I don't dispute that that's actually possible. But I do dispute the fact that it's possible for everybody. Because the presumption is, do you know what I mean? Because the presumption is that everybody understands even just how to create an agent, not the least of it, actually give that agent some useful stuff to do. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair, and I agree with you, because as I said, some people think that just by making a certain product, it can be whatever web application or mobile application, that itself is enough for their product to be successful.
Yeah.
When I write about certain product frameworks on my profiles, I cannot even remember how many founders have never heard for them. And like if you're making a startup, a company, well, you should know like basics, product principles and frameworks.
Yeah. Do you think most people know basic products and basic principles and frameworks for product design or product development?
Well, most people know, definitely, but I think if somebody is making their own startup, they should at least try to learn a bit about it.
How do you? I spent a lot of time talking about engineers and the conversation I've had with engineers and this idea that like you're trying to minimize noise and understand signals. How do you distinguish in the product space like a useful product signal where you're like, okay, this could actually be successful, from noise that just gets generated either by, I don't know, user behavior or some kind of AI model output? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think that actually talking to your users is really important, because basically it also comes down to experience, of course. But there are sometimes strong signals if users are persistent in getting something, that most of them, they need it for certain things now. During the research phase, we should discover why do they want it, what would they do with it,
Mm.
what would they use it, and if it could benefit the product itself. So sometimes it's combination. I would say it's combination of experience, research, and planning.
Do we think that artificial intelligence is actually going to give, when you implement these features, right, it's going to give us a better chance or a higher propensity to have a successful product? And is there a place where like there's a hybrid system where both the AI agents or just AI and humans are working together to try to understand like, actually this product would be better or worse?
Well, I think the AI itself won't help people to be successful, but to the people who have knowledge, who are working with serious dedication towards their goal, AI will just make it easier for them.
In what way?
In a way that they will be mostly oriented on big picture, on strategy, on goals, on communication, human to human, because that's still important, obviously. But
Right.
AI can send emails, delegate tasks, do the, I don't know, send reports, search for documents, and so on.
So when you're building this, I presume part of this idea comes from feedback that you're getting from other product designers. Yeah, is that fair?
Yeah, designers, managers, and startup owners.
So what are they telling you that they need that's missing and that you're trying to build to fill that gap?
Oh, actually, they're missing quite a few things.
Tell me.
But as I said, okay, I realize that many of them will need help. Like I'm actually planning to introduce some product framework templates, such as, for example, North Metric Star, jobs to be done, and so on, which will help mostly founders who don't have background in product design. They also need clear organization of their process, the decisions, reasonings, who reviewed which decision, why the decision was made, who's doing what in certain teams.
What kind of infrastructure do they need to deploy to be able to run this when it's like fully operable, if you know what I mean? On the back end, do they need to reorganize the data that they have? Do they need to rebuild like some of their data lakes and data implementation systems? Do they need to have an AI manager? And like, what are the things from an infrastructure standpoint, both technologically and on the human side, that they need to actually take the most value out of this thing that you're designing?
Yeah, they don't need to touch the back end. So I have a database connected and everything. They can just do like put the details and informations that they need. So it's only in the web, in the client. Backend they don't need to touch. And also when I implement AI, everything will work from my side. They will get their reports, frameworks, templates, and everything that they need.
And how do you handle the decisions to use which backend model? Do you know what I mean?
Are you talking about AI or just like regular backend?
So the artificial intelligence angle is the most interesting to me here, right? So obviously all the product design stuff you understand, the templates you're going to build on your own, that stuff makes sense. That's based on your experience that you've had as a product designer. But if you're going to add artificial intelligence features, you're going to have to make a decision as to, are you going to use, which large language model are you going to use? Is it going to be Fable 5? And if so, how are you going to pay for it? And how are you going to control costs around it? Or are you going to use ChatGPT and just use their subscription model? Are you going to use Grok, which is 6 to 8 times cheaper? Or are you just going to go completely open weight and use DeepSeek or use Kimi K3 when that becomes open weight? Like, how do you make a decision around which part of the artificial intelligence value chain you're going to use to handle the AI stuff that you want to build into the product?
Well, I'm actually trying all those models because I also have a developer background. I was a web developer before becoming a product designer. So I'm actually trying them out to see if what they can build, if they can build what I need. And let's say if 4 out of those 8 models or 10 models can build what I need, then I will look into details, also like the pricing, how I would connect it to the back end, and so on. So I'm still in my planning and discovery phase there. But that is the way that I'm going for.
But when you look at just the pricing, there's been a whole radical change in the way like open weight versus these closed models, the frontier models that we have in the United States. And I think Thinking Machine Labs actually came out and said that they were going to open source their model, and their business model was going to be to use Tinker to provide services and fine tuning around their models. So I'm just curious, like how you consider, because it can get very expensive if you're using Fab5. ChatGPT is still on a subscription only basis, and then these open weight models can be way cheaper. Are you trying to get to a point where the AI is good enough, or it has to be the best? And what's the balance between cost and output?
Yeah, I have checked about OpenAI's API. I think for now it's not yet. It's pretty affordable, but yeah, probably that. Or I will look into other models as well because I haven't done them all yet.
Yep.
So I have actually yet to do all the researching there because, as I said, like I launched like a bit more than a month ago, so I'm still really busy with everything. But yeah, that's actually a good question, and I will have to think in more details about that because your question. I always aim for the best service. That's my idea. But as you said, the pricing is a real question here. So I don't know. Maybe DeepSeek, maybe OpenAI.
This is going to be a big question you're going to have to solve when you actually finalize this stuff, right? Because the costing can be very different. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about like what is good enough, and does good enough matter? And I think the models, again, just my opinion, unsolicited, but I think one of the things that I've learned over time, at least from talking to literally hundreds of people operating in the AI space, both people on the development side, meaning developing the models, but also people using them, is that we've reached a point now where I think some of these models are good enough, even if they're not scoring the highest on the benchmarks, and benchmarks themselves can be kind of deceptive, right? Because behavior in the real world can be very different than behavior in the sort of benchmark world. Yeah.
Yeah. But it also might depend on their user, on their business model. If they are presenting themselves as the highest output, highest quality product,
Sure.
or they can have, and also that the price would reflect that. So, for example, there is a difference between $250 per month and $50 per month. So, yeah, I would say also depends on the business model because human factor is still pretty important when it comes to all this.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. What does good product discovery look like when you run the risk that AI is just out there generating hundreds of ideas? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing is to solve a problem, basically. For example, how product signal. I wasn't planning to make a product signal. I was never planning to make my own startup. But then I realized when I write about product strategy, frameworks, and so on, people were always interested in that, and they would in my DMs to tell them more about this. So I actually that's the way how I got the idea to build product signal. I realized, okay, this is a problem that is to be solved for these people. So that was my idea. Yeah, I think the most important idea is to just solve a problem for people.
And before I let you go, do you use your own design principles and design methodologies to design your own products?
Yes.
And do you look for, so that's the first part. And do you look forward to a time where like you can actually use the artificial intelligence that you're going to deploy to help yourself and your own business on your product development cycles?
Yes, I use my product systems, and I I'm using GitHub Copilot. I have to say, I have seen everybody's almost switched to Claude or
Yep.
DeepSeek or something like that. But I would say that GitHub Copilot is more like what I call it AI assistant than autonomous AI agent, because I'm giving it like small chunks of code to edit, to implement, because I'm testing part by part of the product signal. For example, if I'm adding a feature today, I'm just editing or adding one feature. Basically, I'm not developing a full product today, so that's why I don't need full AI agent. But yeah, I like working with. I think GitHub Copilot is really good. It has some good models. It has Cloud Opus 4.8, Sonnet, GPT 5.3, 4, 5. I don't know. They're coming out all the time. New models. So yeah, basically that's it. I use my principles.
Got it. Okay, Stefan, thank you so much for doing this today. Thank you for being so generous with your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael, as well. Thank you for having me.
It's been my pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you.
Okay, Martin, let's bring in Michael Walters, our last guest of the day. Michael, how are you? I'm doing super duper. Let's get you into the main room and then we can jump right in. Okay, there you are. So we wanted to have you on. And just so you know, like I kind of like these vertical conversations because it allows us to dig a little bit deeper into services and stuff. But we want to have you on to talk about how a unified payment infrastructure can help transport operators. It's very specific, right? Lower costs, collaborate more effectively, and build more flexible mobility businesses. Tell us a little bit about tikpay before we kind of jump into the details, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Look, thanks for the opportunity to chat to you today. And yeah, and it's usually I don't have too much trouble diving down rabbit holes on transport, so haul me back if I go too far.
No, go.
But look, tikpay was set up in 2023, I guess, and we developed an application, put it into the market in 2024 with a client, and now we're sort of at the rollout stage. So we're still a very early stage company.
Super.
I guess the goal we're trying to solve is, ticketing has changed. It hasn't really changed a lot for a long time, but there's a lot of pressure coming on public transport authorities and commercial transport agencies as well to really come up with a better way of making transport a more seamless experience for people. And at the same time, there's a lot of costs in this business. It's, people are blown away when I tell them, a large city is spending billions to build public transport ticketing systems. And also to enable innovation, make life a lot simpler for people who want to travel, so they don't have to think about, do I have to buy a card or put a ticket on it before it happens?
Yeah.
Really just to make the whole thing a lot more seamless for everyone.
Why has this been so hard up until now? Do you know what I mean? Because you're right. Like I've lived in multiple cities, right? So I've lived in Bangkok, I've lived in Tokyo, I lived in Kyoto, I've spent a lot of time in Hong Kong. I spent a ton of time in Singapore. All of the transport systems are different. All of them give you a different way to pay. Some of them are public, some of them are private, right? Like I believe the companies in Bangkok are private companies, not public companies, where the metro in Japan is kind of semi-private, semi-public. Like, what has been done that's good? What has been done that's bad? And why has it been so hard?
Well, I think you've been very lucky, man. You lived in some cities with some of the best public transport in the world. The Japanese
Tokyo,
are,
for sure.
Japanese are amazing, and I think the Octopus guys in Hong Kong have done an incredible job, and more recently LTA in Singapore. Unfortunately, it's not quite as nice as that in a lot of other cities around the world. And so I think that what's been done right, what's been done wrong. I think there's been a lot of change in transport ticketing. We're really, the industry's really struggled to keep up with other changes in society. And part of that's because it's really a sort of like a card-based system. And if you think back to banking,
when you say card-based, can we define this? You mean like the Rabbit card in Bangkok, or the or the Pasmo in Japan, or let me get this right. What is it? The
Touch and Go in Malaysia,
Octopus
or Oyster, or Octopus, or Opal in Sydney. They're basically stored value or stored product cards. And when you think about it, it's a bit like banking was 40 years ago. You'd have a passbook, you'd walk into the bank branch, and the last teller wrote the balance on it, and that's the source of truth. And, you know, and the big systems the banks used to build, you know, these billion-dollar systems out the back, same number coming up again and again, you know, really just big batch processing systems to reconcile it all at the end of the day. That's what transport's like today. So the source of truth is that card, that Rabbit card, that Touch and Go card, that Opal, that Oyster, etc., with a balance on it that you've had to prepay into it, or a product that you've put on it. And, you know, that's a major inconvenience for consumers. And it discourages them from using public transport, to be frank. What they need to do and what they've realized they've done, and this is, you know, what digital payments have created, is this problem where people are saying, look, so simple for me to do everything else. I just touch my card, my digital wallet, my QR code. It's all simple. Why do I have to go and buy another card over here? Why do I have to go over there to top it up? Why do I top it up automatically? It still takes a day until it gets onto my account. That's the sort of friction that's been in the market for a while. That's the sort of friction, you know, we're desperately trying to solve, because people are walking with their feet. They're going and using Ubers and Grabs and Gojeks and Diddies and the like, rather than public transport. Public transport hasn't really recovered from COVID. It's really struggled.
This is actually really interesting. I'm glad you kind of made the comparison between, let's just use Uber or Grab or whatever where I live, right, and some of the other services, Didi in China, wherever it is. I can literally get into a Grab. I can order it, I can get into it, and I can leave without ever paying for it. I mean, I do pay for it, but it always felt weird to me. Like I remember when Uber was first introduced in Bangkok, like I gave them my credit card and I just like literally got out of the car, and it always felt weird to me, but like it felt really cool. Do you know what I mean? I could order a Grab for you and you never had to pay for it. Like it felt really cool. But how do you get public transport to be the same way? Because when I order the Uber or order the Grab, it knows it's me, right? Because I have an account.
Correct.
So I'm just trying to think out loud. Like, do I have an account on the BTS? Do I have an account on the Tokyo Metro? And you're right, Japan's good. Like you can literally use, and you've been able to do this for a long time. You could have a Passmo actually on your phone and just kind of swipe it over in Japan. Like you're kind of living halfway in the future.
And what you did is you took that Passmo and a lot of the other systems, you took the balance off that physical card
and put it on your phone.
Onto your wallet.
In
your phone, exactly. So it's a card. That's what I call a card-based system.
Same. Yeah.
Really, what it needs to move to is what you said, is an account-based system. Something where you can tap into that system using your watch, your phone, your card, your NFC device or tag or whatever. As long as that's uniquely associated to you, like a biometric or even a license plate on a car, then I know it's on your account, right? So you can tap in with one and tap out with the other. You can mix and match even to a degree. And once you've got that, it becomes a lot easier for consumers. It takes away the friction. They don't have to think about it. And it's a very frustrating situation. I don't know if you've ever I use, various ride-hail services all the time. And then I get into a taxi and I almost walk out of the taxi without paying.
So can I tell you a funny story? This is kind of the same thing, but a little bit different. You've been to Tokyo?
Oh yeah, I love Tokyo. Fantastic city.
But when you get into the taxi, they open the door for you.
Oh yeah, and
when you get out, they close the door for you. So do you know what it's like when you lived in Tokyo for 20 years and you take a taxi in New York and you just get out and leave the door open?
I can imagine.
And then the guy starts screaming at you and you try to explain to him like they do it automatically in Tokyo, and he's like, yeah, blow me, because that's not like, why are you lying to me? You're just lazy. But the point is that, like, how does that translate then into the payment? In other words, back up and tell me, not from a taxi perspective, because I feel like that's kind of been solved, but from a public transport perspective, how do you handle all the like nuances and edge cases, in the sense that, like, let's say you and I are in Singapore and I just want to buy your ticket. Let's say you're my guest or you're my client and I want to buy your ticket. If it's uniquely associated with me, can I buy two and then comp two people in? Because I cannot give you my Passmo in Japan. I can't go in and then hand you my Passmo. Like the police will come and grab you, even though I want to pay. How do you talk? How do you fix those sort of parts of the seamless system when it's uniquely identified? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no. I think it's, I think one of the classic problems we see, and you hear it again and again, is mothers with kids. Yeah, not all kids travel free. And,
or your girlfriend,
or whatever, family units. So yeah, exactly. And so, for us, we, depending on the operator, everyone has slightly different policies, what they want to do. But, we have, basically a mum can step on with two kids, press the little button, adds two, taps a card, goes on. So you don't have to do an assisted transaction with a driver or whatever. There are other systems where we can allow you to tap 2-3 times. I don't know if you've ever been to Madrid and you got off on the bus from the airport. You know, there's 4 people coming. The driver holds up 4 fingers, and each time he hears you tap, he drops a finger. So there's models like that around. And I think we're sort of in this in-between state, a bit like you and I with taxis and the like, where some people are in an account-based world and some are in a card-based world, and it's still quite clunky. And the ones that are lagging are traditional buses and metros and trains. The ones that are leading are e-bikes and e-scooters and ride-hail and things like that. And so, you know, bringing that all together so they've all got the same account base makes that a lot simpler for consumers. And as you say, you just get on, you get off, you get in, you get out, you be on, you be off, and it's all occurring in the background. It becomes a seamless and frictionless process.
What should it look like? We haven't established that yet. So like, just give me an example of like what the example and what the use cases are and how it handles some of these things we've already talked about. And I love the thing in Madrid, you've sized me up and said you've never been to Spain, which is weird since everybody in my family's been to Spain except for me.
Yeah, beautiful city.
But you can imagine what that's like. Yeah, I'm sure it's amazing. Maybe in my next life I'll be able to go. But what should it look like? If you were building this ticketing thing from scratch and you were deploying machinery and technology and even artificial intelligence, what would it look like ideally? And what is TickPay building?
I think it starts to look like a very seamless process. So when it gives you choice, you know, as a consumer, do you want to be anonymous? If you want to be anonymous, then you just use your Visa or your MasterCard. You can load it into your digital wallet on Apple Pay or Google Pay. You can put it on your watch. You can tap in and tap out. We can link those all together through the networks, and we can see that you've made all these trips. We've got the fare engines. We know the discounts. So we can work out the very best fare for you at the end of the day. Or if you want to purchase a monthly subscription up front and then tap the card you use to purchase it all month long, again, it would be a very seamless experience. But then if you're a child or an elderly person, you've got a concession, then you can register that concession and the concession can automatically be taken off, or the discount because you're a member of a motorist club or a group of some type. So it can be a very light touch, anonymous type program, but it becomes richer where you might have, for example, an employer paying for all their employee travel during the day, a parent paying for their kids, a government program providing support for people who are unemployed to find jobs. These sort of things can start to be developed. So from a public policy perspective, you've got a far more efficient service.
And what does the data gathering look like here? Even if, like, I want to be anonymous, one of the reasons, frankly, and I shouldn't say this out loud, but one of the reasons why I don't have a rabbit card is because I've got to give away too much information to be able to use one. And frankly, I don't want people to know where I'm going. It's nobody's business except for mine.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people have that view, and that's absolutely perfect.
But it will help the service itself if they know how old I am, how tall do you know what I mean? Because then they can customize, but then they can optimize like the number of cars and the number of services. In Japan, you know, they have women only cars and they do it during a certain time because they know like who's on the train and who's not on the train. What kind of data can be gathered, even if your name is anonymized, that's then going to make the service better? And how can ticketing help that?
Yeah, so look, today there's literally no link. You can go and buy a weekly pass, you can buy a daily ticket, you can do all this. You can't link them to bring the same person. So the first thing we do is we're allowing them to link. Whether you buy a pass in advance or you tap as you go or whatever, you've now got a single view of that person and all the travel they do. And from that, you can construe pretty quickly where they're going from and to each day, the travel corridors, timing. That data is also really good because your transport systems have to be sized to their peak, which means all your capital is tied into 8 to 8:30 in the morning and 5:30 to 6 at night. So if you can push people off to the peaks a little bit, onto the shoulders with pricing incentives or things like that, that can have a huge impact. Or even just better, more direct routes can have a huge impact. So I think the first thing is we've never been able to identify a traveler consistently to get data that's actually useful in many cases, unless you're someone like TfL or LTA who are incredible at that sort of stuff. For the vast majority, we haven't got a clue. So the first thing this does is by having a single account, I can, because you know what it's like. You probably have 4 or 5 Pasmo cards and Octopus cards, because if you lose one in a draw or whatever, you can't survive. To them, you're 4 or 5 different people.
Yeah.
You know, so bring it all together into a single account. That's the first thing is you now know, you might not know their age, you might not know their sex or something like that, but you've got a pretty good idea that's one person and where they're traveling. A lot of people, about 50%, will identify themselves to get concessions or whatever, which will give you that extra little bit of information.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we know their name, but we can contact them. We've got some basic information about them. So it's not perfect, but it's a dramatic improvement over what we've had for so long.
I should let you know that I have a Passmo card. I have a Singapore MRT card, and I don't have a Rabbit card. The Rabbit people are going to hate me, even though I know the founders.
I've got a Rabbit card. I can send it to you.
No, please keep it for yourself. Please keep it for yourself. What is it better if some of these systems, right? Like I said, in Thailand, I think they're private. Some of them have been privatized, but are still kind of public systems. What happens when I can use the same mechanism to pay for all of them in a city or in a country where there's like this sort of diverse implementation of what's called public transport?
Yeah, so it's a real struggle because politically within large metropolitan areas, there's a lot of pressure from voters to have a single ticket, a single system, make it simple for me.
Yeah.
And
so can I stop you just for a second? So
Yeah,
you've
sure.
been in Bangkok, obviously, yeah?
Yep.
The MRT
Yes.
system is completely different than the BTS system.
Yes.
Like
Yep.
completely different. And it's like night and day, like that little black puck you use to get on the MRT and then the cards you use to get on the BTS. And on the way into the BTS, you tap it. On the way out, you put it in. Like, it's
And if
good.
you go on buses, it's
Oh my
another
God, the buses,
solution
you take a little,
again. And the ferries.
the
Yeah.
bus, you take, I ride the bus down Scunville Road. You take a little thing, a little piece of wood out of the, it's just amazing.
I haven't seen that. I've got to have a look at that.
Sorry,
one.
go ahead. But yeah, but again, consumers like I am, and I think Thai people are the same way. We just want like a unified system to be able to do this. How hard is that for tikpay to implement? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, look, I think a lot of it comes from, firstly, a mandate from government. So what you're seeing in Philippines, in Thailand, Vietnam, a lot of these countries is public the transport agency or the department basically saying, look, every vehicle needs to be able to support Visa, MasterCard, whatever our domestic debit card or QR card program is. That's really the first step to mandate that, because a lot of operators are sitting on a very large amount of cash in those stored value card programs. And so it's not always in their interest to open it up. So
yeah, for sure.
That's
Because again, it's like Starbucks. Starbucks made more money from like their card than they did from the coffee because they have billions of dollars sitting on the card, and then they do, they just invested short term.
It's shrinkage, as well. And it's large, the numbers are over $1 billion in big cities. It's a lot of money sitting around. And
I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
yeah, so that's the first. Second side is really, this is about technology. Much the same as we were talking about passbooks earlier. They build systems the same way. You go to one company, they put all their technology, they build a very proprietary closed system.
Yeah.
And that's very expensive to do. We can, devices like validators on buses cost thousands of dollars, but there's no reason why they can't cost 500 as essentially an Android mobile phone. So it's trying to get that commoditized devices, trying to get plug and play, open APIs, etc. A lot of that is driven by government, but also some of the big operators. So you've got big global operators who look at this and say, every city we operate in, we've got different systems we have to use. Wouldn't it be nice if we had one system, one common way of using that we could do? It becomes easier to train drivers, administrative staff, etc., etc. So the pressure's coming from lots of different angles, from consumers that want simplicity, from government agencies that want better public policy implementation of transport, and from operators themselves who are looking for efficiencies, looking to reduce cash collection on buses, which can add 10 or 20% to the cost of running a bus network.
Yeah.
All these things are coming together. And I think what digital payments has done is it's all of a sudden been the glue that, and to a degree, the rocket that sends these parties into action. It's now possible, I guess.
Is there a loyalty aspect to this as well? In the sense that, like, if I put and again, you mentioned this, but if I put my Visa or my MasterCard, or frankly any bank card in Singapore, you can just literally swipe your card on the thing. You don't even need their card to do it anymore, right? I can use my bank card.
Correct.
It shocked me.
Yeah.
But is there a loyalty aspect to this too, in the sense, 10 rides get one free kind of thing, but also they do this on the airlines, or is it just too much of a management thing on the balance sheet side for the public transport companies to be able to do that?
It's a good question. I think with higher value transport, there is loyalty, sort of inner city train services, coach services, stuff like that.
Yep.
You're not seeing it a lot in urban transit, although you do see sometimes discounts. You know, those guys in Bangkok that own the transport systems also own the big shopping centers at the stations. And so there's that sort of association and opportunity.
Well, also
there.
some days it's just free. They're just like, I don't know, today's this holiday or the king's birthday or whatever. It's free today. And you're just like, really?
That's
all
right.
day? Spend all day in the BTS.
Thinking, you know, recently with fuel the costs going higher, a lot of public transport authorities have made public transport free for a period of time to take the pressure off households. So there's a lot of government intervention in public transport for good policy reasons sometimes. But it needs a lot more flexibility than has been possible in the past. And that's what, you know, digital payments and more open systems is giving public transport.
What type of CapEx, and again, I don't need an exact number, but if, you know, again, I'm just talking about my own experience, but I presume this is true everywhere in the world, that the systems that do the buses are different than the systems that do the underground, that do the overground trains and all this other stuff. To standardize all of that, like I believe that a lot of the machinery would have to change. And to be fair, the BTS is actually pretty good. I can pay by coins, I can pay by bills, I can pay by QR, right? Or like you said, I can just use the Rabbit card there. So there are multiple ways to pay. I wouldn't call it frictionless, but it's not that bad. I'd like it to be easier, to be fair, but it's not that bad. But what sort of CapEx would be necessary to modernize, I don't know, like even the MRT here, to so that it could take advantage of all the benefits of having this digital ticketing that you're talking about?
Look, I think it's an interesting case. You know, some of the use cases we've seen around the world, cities have said, look, we've got this big old system. It costs us a lot to maintain it. When they look at the numbers, they find that the maintenance cost per year, 25% sometimes of the original development cost,
really?
which can be in the billions,
Yeah.
is a lot more than the cost of actually replacing the terminal. So you get payback periods sometimes of 12 months or less.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a big cost to replace all those card reading devices. They have to do that anyway as they move to Visa and MasterCard acceptance because of the standards around contactless EMV and
Got it.
Apple Pay and Google, etc. So that's really the trigger that starts to change. And then what they need to do then is have a single account-based back office for it, or one that is shared. So in the United Kingdom now, they have a project underway to build a sort of like a shared, almost back office of last resort to allow transport operators to share tickets and customers between each other.
I feel like and I haven't been there in a while. I haven't been in the UAE since 2014, but I feel like the train system that they had there was like, again, living a little bit in the future. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it at all, but are there...
No card system. Is this Dubai or... Sorry.
Dubai. I was thinking about Dubai.
Yeah. No
are there places in the world where you look at the ticketing system and you think, yeah, that's you know what I mean? Or is it all of it not so great?
I'm the wrong person to ask. You sort of need to ask somebody who you know, really has a set of unique requirements, and, you know, can I go into a city and those requirements be fully met? Look, I don't think there's one city that's you know, the leader in this globally. I think Transport for London has been a leader for a while. Hong Kong has been, and Singapore as well.
Yep.
New York in the past. I think what you'll find is, because there's so much change going on at the moment, different cities are trying different ways of doing things to see what works. And so I think what you'll see emerge in the next few years is a few cities like Transport for London did 15 years ago emerge as, oh yeah, these guys are the idea leaders. They're the innovators. They're the ones who are really pushing the boundaries to get the right solution out there. So I think it's going to be actually a really interesting period for the next 5 or 10 years as these systems start to roll out, whether ours or other parties as well. There's quite a lot of change about to occur.
Well, I love this. Again, I said this at the beginning of our conversation, but I love these sort of very specific vertical implementations of technology because, again, they are so specific and the problems that they're solving seem to be quite obvious. And you're right, the payback period seems quite quick as well. So you may have to make a multi-billion-dollar investment, but at the end of the day, billions of dollars run through these systems. And if you can lower your cost by 25% a year, well, you're winning really quickly, I would think, yeah?
Yeah, and 25% is very achievable for a lot of these systems, some as high as 40%. So, but no, it's a really material saving, but it's a big step, and that change. I think what you're going to see is some cities are finally going to do it well, and others are going to gain courage from that to do it for themselves.
Agreed. Yeah, you just need one big city to sign on and have like a huge impact, and then everyone's going to look at them and say, have it work exactly, and just see it happen in real life, and then they're just going to go like, we need that. Who does that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Okay. Michael, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. I really appreciate it. This was really interesting.
really
I hope you
appreciate
enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yeah, it's fun chat. Thanks so much,
Super.
Michael.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Yeah, bye for now. Okay, that is it for ATP Insights today. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. As always, we've had a bunch of people watching along with us, so thank you for all of that. Give us a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on all of our socials, on X, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. And let us know in the comments if there's anything you would like us to discuss on our upcoming shows, or just give us any kind of feedback you want. I spend a lot of time trying to respond to the interaction that we have on all these platforms. We really appreciate it. It gives us great information. My name is Michael Waitz, and I'm going to say goodbye for now.